Durek, my man, what is happening?
Hi, Luke.
Here we are again.
I know. Last time we were at your house for 4 or 5 hours, I think.
Oh, dude, that was, we went all night. I think we did a double header where I was on your podcast, you were on mine. And
we did healing.
Yeah.
It was good stuff.
It was a whole extravaganza. And that's why sometimes people don't know what I mean when I'm like, do you have a hard out after this? Like, do I need to be aware of any time frame? And if they say no, it could be a 4-hour podcast. It just depends where it goes. But today, at least, we're getting a fairly early start. It is 3:44 p.m. in California. So if we start now, at least we know we're not going to be up all night. So those watching on YouTube, by the way, you can watch 99.9% of my interviews on YouTube. And for those of you watching the video here, you will see Shaman Durek's beautifully designed cover of his new book, Spirit Hacking. So let's just jump right into how excited you are about your book. What's up with that?
I'm very excited, but I'm more excited about the information that people are going to get. You know, I mean, for me, the idea of putting a book and creating a book wasn't so much about me as more as it was about the people. And, you know, and so I look at the narrative of when I do something that it's always in alignment to giving back the power back to people, you know, and I know that, you know, this book, it's not my book, it's our book. It's not, nothing belongs to me. You know, I have this whole model that nothing belongs to me. It's like, it's the idea of like everything pours into me and I pour it out to everyone else. And I'm just that, you know, that pitcher that's pouring and constantly getting filled up by spirit and then pouring, and nothing belongs to me. And I think, you know, for me, that was more of the love message that I needed for myself to truly see the fruition of, you know, our book come into play. And I'm really happy. I'm really happy about it. I know that I can be a bit controversial, and I know that I can be very much like, you know, like, here's my viewpoints on things from my shamanic perspective. But at the same time, I make it fun, I make it playful, and, you know, and also I make things very short based on my dyslexia. I make things very short in it so people can read little vignettes and not have to read these long, drawn out, boring stories. But I really want it to be relatable to where we are right now in our modern culture.
I think that's one thing I liked about the book, because as we were saying before we started recording, you know, I always get like what do they call it? The galley copy, like the preview copy of books when people come on the show and they sit on my shelf and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to read it. And then I look on my calendar and it's like, ding, you have a recording with Shaman Durek. I'm like, oh shit, I haven't read the book. So I actually really liked that yours is that way, because I'm a little bit on I don't clinically have ADD, but long shit is not my jam. Like, I like to just take bite-sized pieces. So I was like, oh, sick. It was really easy to actually kind of jump around, and you have really good, catchy titles for the different sections of the book and the different things you go into. And it's like, it very much draws you in. You're like, oh, what's this one about? Like, one of the things I thought was really cool about it, and I'm gonna totally go out of order, but I thought this was so cool, is you have like a glossary of terms that you use in your book. So like the blackout, the matrix, the Maya, bobblehead, keeping it on blaze, the lit train, like all the shit that I hear you say in when we hang out and on your social media and whatnot.
Keeping it lit.
Yeah, but I thought that was kind of funny that you actually laid that out, and then later in the book, as you're using these terms, people know what that means. So right off the bat, break down what's a bobblehead.
So a bobblehead is someone who basically is so used to just taking information in and saying yes to it without actually giving it any kind of thought or holding it up against the lens of unconditional love. So bobbleheads are people who just say yes to everything that's thrown at them because they want to feel safe and comfortable in their uncomfortable. And, you know, so when you think of a car and you have those, like, what I loved about the 50s was they had like these heads, the bobbleheads that would bobble in the car. Like,
right,
that.
Like those little hula dancers.
Yeah, so that's a bobblehead.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's funny.
So I always had the baseball one with the head just going like this while you're driving, you know, and it's just a bobblehead, you know. It's just, you're a bobblehead. You don't hold up information and bring, an understanding of what it is you're actually being told and fed. You're just taking it in and saying yes to it, And as children, we were all bobbleheads because we were told to obey certain rules without asking our parents, did you hold this up against the lens of unconditional love? How do we know the information you're giving us is actually vital information that has been tested under the field of unconditional love for the sake of my growth and for the sake of my ability to adapt on planet Earth? They don't. They just take whatever from each ancestor and each ancestor and each ancestor, and they keep bobbling their heads all the way until it gets to you. And so then we become the anomalies. We become the black sheep. We become, the outcasts, the ones who break the rules. We do things outside of that perimeter and that paradigm because we're meant to defy the system. And that's how you see the new leaders. That is the new leadership isn't based in, just one person. The new leadership is based in millions of people recognizing self-actualization while on the journey to self-actualization. And that in itself is something to be happy about.
I like that. My version of bobblehead is sheeple. Right? It's like
that's exactly what it is.
When you watch a herd of sheep, it's like one little ass dog can wrangle, 100 head of sheep on a mountaintop, and the sheep don't know that if they just turned around and all rammed the dog, that they would outnumber the dog. But they just blindly are kind of led to slaughter or shearing to make wonderful comforters. But sheeple is kind of, and the bobblehead thing, I think is starting to become dismantled, and I want to get your take on this. I think largely because, and I'm not giving myself sole credit here, obviously, but people like me and like you that are having the freedom to put out a book or put out a podcast or have a YouTube channel or have a social media following and have a point of view that's outside of the matrix, that is free and not beholden to corporate interests. Where like when I grew up, when you grew up, I mean, it's like whatever's on the TV and radio is bought, and in the school system is bought and paid for, and you're being fed what information the powers that be behind those entities want you to believe. Mm-hmm. And now we're sort of like, in the position where there's a lot of information that's from free thinking people. So we have the ability to unplug and not be bobbleheads and not be sheeple. What about the flip side of that, though, in that many of us now that are seekers of truth are more easily misled because anyone now can have a platform and a microphone, and that means a lot of people that are also full of shit, like the mainstream media largely has been and continues to be, that there's a lot of, sort of snake oil and misleading people out there that have a voice because no one's holding them accountable.
Absolutely. I think there's an unfortunate disposition for those who are holding the torch for realness and authenticity. I think that the quality of human beings on the planet are moving through the age of narcissism. So through the age of narcissism, the idea is to glorify, to be seen, to be liked, to be loved, to be honored, and to have value. And through that context, you get to learn about like what it is you really are about and what it is that really moves you or motivates you or stimulates you or allows you to shine your best light or, whatever the situation may be. So when we're dealing with a lot of the people with the snake oil and so forth, they're also playing a role for people to get more clarity within their heart space, right? Because your brain space technology, your heart space technology, they have to be functional together. And the idea of that is recognizing, like, for instance, a woman said to me, well, how do I know a shaman is really a shaman? Well, you'll know because a real shaman is trained in the understanding of loving and honoring creation through what creation creates. And that means that there's a great love and connection that is created individually and collectively. So my relationship to this beautiful plant or to an animal is not seen as an indifference or something that's different. We see it with the same reverence that I have for you. The energy of connection is also realizing that no matter what culture it may be, or however the observance of God may be perceived or source, or however spirit, or however people want to acknowledge the creator, however it is, there is an acknowledgement of unconditional love and acceptance for humanity through the process of the connection. So the connection goes deeper than just saying hi or whatever. It's how I connect with you, how I hug you, how we interact. these are really important factors. So when you're dealing with a shaman, that's the first key in the base energy of shamanism. You can't be a shaman not because you're in a tribe, not because the tribe chooses you to be a shaman. That's not what makes you a shaman. What makes you a shaman is the spirits choose you. And they choose you by looking for certain characteristics in your behavior that is operating in the field of all inclusive, all love, all present, all connected, all recognizing that the beauty and the essence of all things are valuable. The wind is valuable, the sun is valuable. So when you see shamans drumming and dancing and celebrating, they're celebrating this union, this connection. So that's the first thing you look for. Then you also look at how much time did they do the internal love for themselves to cultivate within their lineage, be indigenous or non-indigenous. How much time have they cultivated in whatever it is that they're bringing forth to the public? Because there is a certain level of accountability, and there's a certain level of reference to how one perceives information versus how someone else perceives information. Has to come from a place of constant inspection through the heart, through the conscious, and through spirit. So, when you think about it, everyone since the time they were a child are, learning things, from, having intense breakups to, starting and ending a business or whatever it may be. And you actually getting your master's, your PhD, your AA, your associate's degree in these types of situations. However, on our planet, we only associate anything institutionalized as a degree of acceptance for the value of knowledge and the aptitude of information that you've gained and used and created an understanding for. However, as we move forward in our evolution and we learn how to thrive and adapt and become more, not so codependent, but much more independent in the nature of our being, and we operate as a sustainable human being, we begin to start looking at all of those fine qualities, that every pain and every situation you went through in life was a part of your training to be who you are. And so we always want to look at that factor, and that's what we hold it up against when we deal with, snake people or people who are pretending. You can tell a pretender because their wisdom is regurgitated. It's flat. They're not bringing new symbols, new healing techniques. They're not bringing new things to the forefront. They're just copycatting everything that they've heard, and they're just sharing it with the people. So those are what I call messengers of information that's already been created. A person who's operating like you and I are operating, we're here to dive deeper than where consciousness that has been created and formulated on Earth feels comfortable to dive. That means going into the unknown without any preconceived ideas of what we're going to experience. As a Lakota Indian, a Native American said to me once, which is going into the canoe without taking your oars with you and trusting that the Great Spirit will lead you to where you need to be.
That's so funny that you put that in that way, because that's often how I think about living a surrendered life, but a surrendered life that still has action, right? Because there's one surrendered life, that's the life of the renunciate, the yogi that goes and crawls into a cave in the Himalayas and disappears forever, and very few people come and get the benefit of the insights of that said yogi. And then there's the one that's actually out there doing the work, and that is also surrendered work, right? So you get in that canoe, but you're still going down the goddamn river. You're just not controlling. You're going in the general direction, but without the oars, you're leaving a lot of that up to nature and spirit, which I think is a really cool way to look at that. So with the bobblehead and the sheeple situation, and now that we're able to unplug from the matrix of the institutional paradigm of learning that you just described, which not all of that has been untrue, but there's a lot of questions yet to be answered in terms of, what we're really doing here on the planet and how everything works, right? So by using prudence and discernment, a combination of what you're saying, if I'm going to boil it down, is like we have to develop that heart intuition, that heart space of a vibrational atonement with truth, but then also some intellect too, because you could fall for, say, a false prophet just because they make you feel good, right? And you're leaving your head out of the equation. You're not using your intellect like, wait, that doesn't actually add up. But if you just rely on the head, then you get caught up in intellectualizing. You don't trust anything because, so many things in the world of spirit are beyond the linear intellect and our capacity to understand something mentally. It's like you have to throw the mentality out of it and lead with your heart. So, and your view, then it's a combination of the two, where you learn how to integrate your God-given intelligence, mentally speaking, but also with that spiritual intelligence and that heart-centered living to find truth and root it out and root out authenticity, because we have such an abundance of information available to us now. I mean, you can open the podcast app, man, or open, Audible and all the books you can get, and
everything,
all the documentaries on Netflix and everything that's even outside of kind of, turning on NBC and getting brainwashed, as we know you pretty much are, that we have so much information available. How do we navigate that and make sure that we're not misled?
Right.
So,
and I also think there's a point where when you navigate that information, right? Because I believe in being data open, and I'm very data open. I'm open to all information, but there is a healthy skeptic in me. And that healthy skeptic always follows under the line, which is, does it help me to adapt better on Earth? Does it make things easier for me to subtract the things I do not need on Earth so that I can have more joy with friends, happiness with my family, grandparents, observe plants, be in nature, ride horses, whatever it is, to really take in and soak in life? And then the other is it moving our species in a way where we're coming more and more aware of the process of acceptance to the degree of unconditional love and self-preservation for our species, for animals, for the mineral kingdom, and for the natural environment, in a way that we're not over-consuming, we're not operating in a very me attitude, we're operating in a we attitude, and the wisdom that we are pulling in is operating from everything that I contribute to life is to forward our species into higher levels of evolution and understanding.
So I want to cover a couple of other terms in your glossary. You talk about the blackout and the matrix. What are those?
So the blackout is when the magnetic energy on the planet becomes more frequency intense, and anything that's been held out of the field of unconditional love has to magnetize through the surface of consciousness to be re-identified in the process of imbalance or balance. So the quality and the nature of humanity has been stuffing and denying and keeping their heads in the sands and not taking responsibility for the things that we've been doing and operating from, and just going ahead and saying it's okay that we're doing all of these things to ourselves because someone else is going to fix it, someone else is going to do something with it. And so what's happening on a planetary level is Gaia is setting a call to wake up more people who are sleeping shamans and telling them wake up and bring the message of collective connection, understanding of sustainability, understanding of preservance, right? Because to preserve ourselves is to preserve the earth, because the quality of earth will not change. Earth can freeze over and be fine. It's just we will not be able to survive. So the blackout is a period of time to bring all of these things to the front and center of our consciousness so that we can identify them, not from a place of judgment, not from a place of we are bad people or we did horrible things, but from a place of how do we correct the imbalances that we've created, what technologies are supporting humanity and which ones are distorting them, and what types of things need to be upgraded in our systems, be it our education, our government, or do we need a government in the way that we have it? Whatever these things are, they are looked at and brought through the lens of love for the sake of love. So what happens is the blackout starts, with a smaller magnetic energy field. And so it just becomes kind of like this lingering thing where people start feeling like things are happening in the world, we need to change. And then it gets stronger, and then it gets stronger, and then it gets stronger. And when it gets stronger to the point where even nature begins to shift and change itself to make us look at how we're affecting the geographical and, the energy of the planet and how we're operating with the planet, with ourselves and with the animals and with the natural kingdom. And then it goes even stronger. And then you're talking about earthquakes, cataclysmic experiences, all of these different things which will affect our lives. The idea of the blackout is to shake up and wake us up. It's to shake up and wake up. And I don't care what anyone says. People can say, oh, you have such a doomsday mentality, Shaman Durek. No, I don't. I have what is called a realness mentality. The realness mentality is, yes, there is desertification happening on the planet. Yes, we are having human migration building, and it will build in the next 2 years to such a level that we have to start making space for other people in borders that we've been defining that they're not allowed to cross. We have to start looking at the share quality of life versus this is mine, this is mine, this is mine. mind to this is ours and we can share this together and we can eat together. I have food to share with you. People get so stuck in the entitlement of things that Whole Foods is always going to be there. Their restaurants are always going to be there. This thing is always going to be there. And that's not reality. And in order for us to be able to shift into new paradigms, we have to be willing to be fluid and flexible enough to handle the changes that are happening right now. And the reason why people get so worked up when they see like the burnings of the rainforest and everyone's like freaking out, oh my God, and like, when the Twin Towers fell and all this stuff, when the blackout first started making itself known through the magnetic change to release the discourse that we've created, the discord, so we can bring it back into accord. People started going into this kind of like, well, I don't know what to do. I feel helpless. Let someone else is going to fix it. And it's that same mentality like Jesus is going to come and save everything. The government's going to fix it for me. Something's going to come do something for me. No, people, you have the power to create these changes. And so what's happening is the blackout is making such a redirection, recourse in our trajectory on how we're living on planet Earth that we have two choices. We either, one, heed the call of Gaia, which is asking for us to take full responsibility, which means in shamanism, the ability to show up with love and begin to course correct the situations that we have created, not mitigate it, however, eliminate it, so that we are able to steer this planet into the fifth dimension. Or we choose not to. We hold an entitlement. We think we're better than everyone's hierarchy games, and I'm a guru and you're this and I'm that, and I got so many likes on Instagram, and everybody's doing all these very unnecessary things because of the age of narcissism, which is actually ending in 2 years. This will then plummet us further down into the spiral and to the point where we won't be able to inhabit ourselves on this planet. And that will be unfortunate. And I don't believe it's going to go that way because I've lived in many different existences of Earth's experiences, and I have seen how humans always wait to the moment where things get really drastic and then they start doing it. And so the reason why I wanted to create this book for all of us was to say, don't wait till it gets like super crazy and we have like only a few choices available to be able to save a certain amount of people on the planet Earth. Let's save as many people on the planet by actually taking action now. Right? And taking action now means restoring the balance both internally and externally. That means what? That means putting women back in their positions of power because women see operation in consciousness of quantum energy. They see the inner and outer discourse of energy. That means they can walk into a room and they can tell you all the possible dangers that can possibly take place. Men are structural supporters. They are great at building structure and they're great at design and operating a field of consciousness that allows there to be a step-by-step process to get to some desire or some idea, and through the magnification of their own feminine non-resistance will allow them to integrate the process of the feminine exchange to allow us to be a cohesive unit, not this male versus women kind of thing that we have going on, but much more of a unified field of consciousness where men and women are operating both their masculine and feminine energies into oneness, and the synergistic energies of that allow us to go outside of the box of what we would normally think as individual polarities to a collective polarity, which allows us to be able to see things we didn't even consider is possible, because the unknown remains unknown when we are not operating in a synergistic field. So if we operate in polarity, we're still dealing with, this whole quantum entanglement. We're still dealing with like right versus wrong, good versus bad, black versus white, women versus men. And this has created a lot of distortion and created a lot of symptoms that we keep focusing on when we keep ignoring the real symptom, which is the sickness that we have inside of us as human beings. And that sickness is this. When you come to this planet, the Matrix was built on the idea of creating a code in your subconscious mind that basically makes it so that you destroy your own resources, destroy your own people, and separate your own people by the nature of you believing that your creator could destroy you. If the idea that your creator could destroy you and the idea that your creator could hurt you or toss you into hell or get rid of you, or that you've done something wrong with this very Santa Claus mentality of God, you create what we call a creator cell code that sits in the subconscious part of your mind, and you don't even realize that you're actually sabotaging and creating these things yourself in relationships, the way you interact with other people, the way you build your communities, and everything. It's happening unconsciously. So the reason why shamans are asked to come back to the planet is because we deal with the subconscious. We deal with the unknown, what's hidden behind the curtain of the things that you and most people on the planet don't want to look at. And that's a lot of people have a hard time with it. I'm not going to say everybody, but some people have written me and they have a hard time with Spirit Hacking book, because I'm saying things to you that you will understand in 7 to 6 years. Some people will understand it right away because they've done the internal love. But the people who haven't done the internal love, they're like, this guy's arrogant. Who does he think he is? What is he talking about? Da, 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 da. They don't understand that some of the greatest innovators, the greatest scientists, the greatest change makers on our planet were all considered black magic, arrogant, crazy, lunatic, under lunacy basing on the moon, and all of these different things. And so the blackout is a representation of saying, hey, this is the time now. We had enough time to kick back and relax and watch the boob tube and hang out and go to the beach and do all these things. But we want to sustain life on this planet. It requires each and every one of us to see our leadership and not to copycat another person, but to go into that place of who you are and pull out all the powers that represent you as an individual, because creation does not duplicate. Creation does not, create the same. Each of us has a code inside of us that unlocks something so powerful that benefits each of us. And we all have something to share with one another. I'm no greater than any other person on this planet. No, I don't care if you're the Dalai Lama. I don't care who you are. I don't care what kind of names you have and how many, if you're a doctor this and scientist this and whatever. You are on this planet together. You're eating, you're sleeping, you're shitting, you're a human being. Wake up and face what's going on and stop using your hierarchies and whatever to make it seem as if you have it all figured out, because you don't, because you're in a human body. So learn that all of us are here. We're all in the mud together, and we all have to get out of this mud. And the only way we're going to do it is through teamwork. And that's what makes the dream work.
As each time you give me an answer, there's so much in there that at different points I'm like, I'm going to pull that out. I'm going to pull that out. I'm going to pull that out. There's too many things to pull out, but I'm going to pull out one thing here, because this is something that I observe in the idea of activism and being a steward of the planet and of disenfranchised peoples and protecting the animals and all of that, is that I sense that oftentimes people with an earnest heart, because they are a loving, caring entity underneath all of their personality, can use ideas such as saving the planet, let's just have a big one, and getting involved in activism and all of that stuff as a means by which to really avoid the deep inner work that they need to do. And so, I don't get involved in, this is my activism.
Can we change work to love?
Yeah.
It's in the book.
Okay. So what I'm getting at here is I see so many well-meaning people thinking that, my job is to save the planet. And it's like doing my own work. What I found is like, my job is to fix the relationship with my mom. My job is to forgive my father. My job is to reconcile relationships that are unhealed. My job is to learn how to live in a way that's less motivated by ego, to learn through meditation to have that degree of separation and discernment so that I can come from a place of love and not just my survival instincts, etc. In other words, to be the change you want to see in the world. That's always the thing I go back to. And so I know what my mission is. My mission is not to be in downtown LA with a picket sign going like, no. That's just not my jam, and nothing against those people. But I'm always sort of like, I'm always thinking about like, where's the balance between wanting to be proactive and be a force for good, and also like, man, work on your own shit. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's like, dude, you can't even get along with your Aunt Tina and you're out trying to save the goddamn world. Like, let's start with the internal work, facing the shadow, oh, by the way, you can be wherever. It's all good. facing the shadow, going through the many dark nights of the soul that we all have to go through. And so I don't know if it's a question. It's an observation that I think
it's a very brilliant
a
observation.
lot of kind of naive, well-meaning people get caught up in trying to fix the external. Meanwhile, as you said, I mean, we can have a million ice ages. The planet doesn't need us to save it. And I'm someone who deeply cares about nature, animals, the planet. I mean, I'm obsessed with the planet and its gifts, but at the same time, I know in any moment the planet could swallow up everything that civilization has built. It just melts into the magma, and it's like we were never even here.
Exactly.
So it's like there's a George Carlin clip. Please, you guys, my producers in the show notes, find me this George Carlin clip for the. It's kind of pessimistic, but it's really true. He's like, dude, you're going to save the fucking planet? You know, the planet's fine.
Thank you.
So where's the fine line between that and like, I don't litter, dude, dog. Like I recycle every goddamn thing. I hate wasting anything. You know what I mean? Like I love the planet. I want to, my motto in life is leave my campsite better than when I found it. And that includes all my relationships, everything I do. Hopefully, of course, you know, I fail at that sometimes, but it's like, I don't know. My worldview on like how to save the planet and change the world and all this, it's like the world that I'm seeing is not even real. The world that I see that I think needs to be changed is a projection of my own consciousness, where I could look at the president right now and be like, I need to change the world. It's like, no, I don't even know what the fuck is going on at those upper levels. I know what TV tells me and I know what alternative media tells me, but what change that needs to happen is uplifting my own consciousness. And in so doing, as the sea level rises, all ships rise with it. But I don't need to worry about your ship. And like, I saw you use a straw, so I'm going to call you out on social media. Or, you know, it's just like, so I don't know. It's more of a rant than a question.
But it's not a rant. It's an understanding of observation and understanding the finer points of reality. And if we look at the finer points of reality, in shamanism, we believe that anything outside of the nucleus is a waste of time because it's the nucleus from within that's creating what's outside the nucleus and what comes into the nucleus. So the difficulty that humans have created for themselves is that they're always going outside of themselves, seeking accolades, seeking permission, seeking this, seeking that, instead of going inside and building a relationship with that inner them, which is the creator of all things, right? And so the only way you can save this planet is truly to everyone to go back into their nucleus and step into that space of the quantum level of consciousness that goes beyond the human existence into the understanding of creation, which is the definition of balance and harmony and love and expansion and all these beautiful things. And so once you step into that place and you're willing to go in, not with aggressive force, not with this like, I need to go in and do this, like you have some mission to do, but you go in, you sit and you wait for the invitation. And then what happens is creation opens up the doorway and invites you in to the nucleus of source. And that's where you get all the information and everything to shift what's going on inside so that your behavior and actions on the outside are matching the frequency of unconditional love and acceptance for all beings. So that is truly how we begin to navigate life in a beautiful and much more passionate and beautiful way.
So, in other words, you could say, all right, let's say I'm an unconscious bobblehead, right? And I go through some painful experiences. I start coming up against this blackout. I start experiencing the shadow element, and I'm unhappy and unfulfilled. So I think, I'm going to go to a yoga class. Oh, I'm going to have a green juice. Maybe I'm going to learn how to meditate. I'm going to start exploring those areas within myself, going to therapy, doing EMDR, shamanism, plant medicine, whatever one's path is to start awakening. Then by working on myself and just focusing on raising my vibration and my capacity for unconditional love, my behavior and the business I do in the world and the way I treat other people and the way I treat the planet, animals, environment, all of that is going to be up-leveled by the very nature that I'm now more conscious, and I might not throw the soda can out my window driving down the road because now I care about myself a little bit more and I have more of a sense of inner fulfillment and peace. Therefore, that's going to emanate into everything that I do. So I might be more attracted to starting a business that's more inclusive, that's helping more people, that's making an impact because I've done the inner work versus someone who's perhaps doing some of the outer work and getting the accolades of being a humanitarian environmentalist, a somethingist, but is ignoring the fact that they haven't worked on their own shit.
Right. I mean, think about relationships, right? So you get into a relationship, and the person who's in the relationship with you, they're responsible on a spiritual level to find your weaknesses. So their whole thing is to find your weaknesses, point them out to you so that you can go inside and clear those triggers and bring harmony back to your inner nucleus. But what most people do is they react to the person, or they react to what they're doing, or they react instead of saying thank you. Thank you for helping me be more clear of that which is necessary for me in my life. Thank you for showing me where I get angry and upset and agitated. Thank you for showing me that I have jealousy inside, which means I have lack and insecurity going on internally. And let me go in and do this beautiful, amazing love towards myself when it comes to, seeing what those triggers are. And then let me apologize for the behavior and the action that I took towards you when I was acting out of character. You see, we have been taught to defend the narrative through our egos, which most people don't realize that the description of the ego has been taken out of context. The ego basically listens to whatever it is that you need. So if someone comes to me for a session, which is to see themselves, and I'll say to them, they'll say, oh, I always choose the worst relationships in my life. So I go, okay, ego, do they have a belief where they have a belief that supports them choosing the worst relationship? And the ego says they have 7 beliefs that I've been supporting the narrative for. Now, whatever your ego supports the narrative for, your ego will defend. So if you have a belief that the world is this horrible place, and that's what your ego is supporting the narrative, and someone comes in and is like, oh my God, I love this world, everything's so amazing, it's beautiful, life is beautiful, you'll look at them and think they're absolutely crazy. And then your ego will come out and be like, yeah, well, what about this? Oh, and did you read this? And did you do this? Because the ego's job is to defend your narrative. It's not to go into the other person's narrative until you give it permission to do so. So what a lot of people do is they don't understand how their ego operates. So they operate in what we call jail mentality. Jail mentality means that they have their ego supporting a narrative they want to be right about. The ego made them right. And they don't realize it's the ego taking commands from them in their reactions, their behaviors, and what they put their energy to that the ego decides to support the narrative for. They don't say, hey, ego, disconnect me from these narratives that I believe in and support this new narrative. I'm open. I want to be open to what that person is. So disconnect me from any narrative that doesn't allow me to be open to that. And so then what happens is the ego just shifts the energy frequency to that narrative and then supports that narrative. And so to truly be able to adapt on planet Earth, we have to identify what narratives we're holding on to and why we're holding on to them. And do they support, again, and this is very important, do they support life on planet Earth? Our life, animals' lives, the nature kingdom, and our ability to sustain life for longevity, not for short, but longevity, meaning long range life and fulfillment and happiness and joy. And if it doesn't, then that narrative should not be supported. And so this is how we look at it in shamanism. So when you go into this polyplexity that people go into, which is like, oh my God, I don't know why I'm in these dysfunctional relationships and da-da-da-da, stop saying that. You know exactly why you're in them because you have an ego supporting a narrative that supports you having those dysfunctional relationships because that's what you told your ego to put its energy on. So you keep attracting that energy. Once you communicate with your ego and ask it, hey, what is the narrative I'm asking you to support? Find out, and then ask the ego, hey, disconnect from that. That's not supporting me. And here's a new narrative. And then also people are like, oh my gosh, Shaman Durek, it's crazy. All the money issues I was having just kind of went away after I changed my narrative. I said, of course it did. Because life is a script of reality and consciousness. As you write the script, your ego creates the characters and the situations to make that script real to you so you stay on planet Earth. It's your great paperweight. It's here to say, hey, you know what? You're not going to, if I don't assist you in believing what you say as the creator, then you're not going to stay in this embodiment because this embodiment is very different from what you're used to. So I'm here to make sure you have attachments. Your attachments will then be your narratives, your belief systems, the ideas that you choose to hold on to as right or wrong. And therefore, that will give you a reason to actually stay on this planet because what you believe is what you see. Pretty simple.
I'm letting like big gaps of silence in there because I'm deciding, do I want to go to my notes or do I want to just see what happens in my head? But I'm going to go to my notes because there's certain shit I wanted to talk to you about. And, if you leave today and I didn't cover it, I'm going to be pissed at myself.
For sure.
Because there's a lot in there too. I want to back up a little bit because having done healing sessions with you, been your friend, we just did one on your friend Nicole here. What's up, Nicole? I got your name right. Okay, wow, amazing. That's one of my first tries that I got right.
Nicole Kogan.
Thank you. Yeah, we just did a whole session on her. She got she got Shaman Durek treatment and she got the biohacking treatment. How are you feeling, by the way? Okay. For those of you on mic that can't hear, she said, I'm feeling a lot of different things right now. I bet you are. So I want to go back into your history a little bit, and this idea of shamanism and you being a sixth generation shaman. Like, what's your lineage and how did this play into your family? Like when you were a little kid, was your grandma a shaman and their grandma was, and like, where are your people from and all that shit?
Yeah. So my family is from West Africa. My great-grandmother was apprenticing my father as a shaman. So my dad trained with her until, I think what he said was like in his mid 18, 19 years old, since he was a kid. And I mean, he did everything. Like he learned all this stuff from her about healing and how to connect to the spirits and how to see things and basically all the stuff that I know. The only difference was when he got older, he walked away from it. And my grandmother, she's my great-grandmother. My great-grandmother, she comes from the Bantu and Yoruba traditions. And then we also have Mende tradition in our family as well. And so back in the 1800s when her tribe was around, everything was fine. We had many ancestors. Her father was a shaman, and then his mom, and then her brother. Everyone was in the family, going back lineage, but then slavery broke out. And so a lot
in those countries in West Africa?
Yeah. And so
were these African people enslaving African people?
These were whatchamacallit, not the Dutch. It was from Denmark and from different places like that. They were going into to Ghana. They were going into West Africa, and they were taking slaves and putting my ancestors in a slave house. I think it was called Christianborg. And so a lot of my families got captured from the tribe in slavery. My grandmother, her sister, and some other family members escaped by cargo to Haiti. Went to Haiti, learned a lot of the Haitian culture, fell in love with a Haitian man, realized that, all of her knowledge in shamanism and everything that she was in the tribe, she saw there was an interesting connection in the Haitian culture. The only thing, she just wasn't into a lot of the things that some of the Haitian people were doing. But her rooted energy was in what was from Africa. So then they left Haiti and went to Nolens. And in Nolens, she had a daughter, and that daughter was my dad's grandmother and was my dad. And so all of them trained in shamanism through her and our lineage, but then my dad walked away from it. And when he walked away from it, he moved on more my grandmother's side, my grandfather's side, my grandfather Leon, he was into it in the beginning, then he turned on it. And then he tried to split the family up the best way he could by becoming Catholic. And so we were like, okay, the way my dad puts it, it was like, okay, he's Catholic. He's going into something different than what we're doing. And then he became like reading and really becoming Catholic. And my grandfather is a type of person who, if I was to describe, he's laughing right now. If I was to describe my grandfather is really, really devoted when it comes to anything spiritual. So when he walked away from that shamanic side, it was like, I'm Catholic, I'm walking away from all of you. He pulled my father with him. My dad didn't want to go with him, so my dad kept training in shamanism with my great-grandmother. So then he went from Catholic into Seventh-day Adventist. So he was in Catholic, then he got into this book about Seventh-day Adventists, and then went into Seventh-day Adventists and became this huge Seventh-day Adventist minister, and then pulled my dad, pulled my Aunt Shirley, pulled all the different family members into it, except for my Uncle Ronnie, my Uncle Leon, and my Uncle Ronnie, Uncle Leon, and Milton. And a lot of them, my dad was kind of playing the field. It was like, yes, I'm going to share with you shamanism because this is a part of our roots, and I believe it, but at the same time, we have to appease, grandfather. So it was like my dad would sit at nighttime and share with me the teachings of shamanism, and then be like, okay, but now you have to say your prayers, because your grandfather's coming over and you need to talk about the Bible. So you need to learn the Bible. So it was very difficult, because when you're Seventh-day Adventist, in our home, we had two sinks. We had like for the meat and for the cheese. You can't mix your utensils from dairy to the meat. The Seventh-day Adventist follows that very Judaic way of life. We keep the Shabbat. We keep the holy days. We're vegetarians. Like, it's very intense. Where my father would cheat. He would pretend that he was these things with my grandfather. We always had to go to my grandfather's house for the Shabbat dinners and all this stuff. And then when he'd be home, he would be cutting down steak and eating his steak and potatoes and doing his thing and being like, yeah, whatever. So it was a very contradiction, because I was like, how I have all these things happening to me where the spirits are contacting me, our ancestors are contacting me and telling me that I have the gifts and all these things. I'm going to start crying. And my father was supportive, but then unsupportive when my grandfather would be around with his power, and then he'd be like, try to pretend, like, be like, son, you got to put all that African stuff away and all that stuff from, that's our past, and you need to get into the religion in the Bible. And then when my grandfather would leave, he'd be like, I'd go to a friend's house and he'd be checking my pockets. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm just checking to see if there's a spell put on you. I'm like, Dad, seriously, this is ridiculous. Like, make up your mind, choose a side, like, you were trained as a shaman. Why are you, following grandfather if you don't really believe in what grandfather's saying? But he wanted his father's approval so much that he played the fence. So for me, growing up in my family's culture, and when you have African culture in your family, things are very different. And being the fact that my mother is her mother's side is West Indian. She also has Native American, and then she also has Norwegian. And so you have this contrast. My mom's this oracle who sees everything before it happens. I mean, she's the one who told me when I was 15 years old that I was gonna be with the Princess of Norway in the future. And she was right. Like, everything she's ever said to me.
Wait, what? Your mom told you that?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Whoa.
I was a skater. I had my Rob Roscobb skateboard, and I was hanging out with my friends, and all of a sudden the phone rings, and my mom's like, a message from the ancestors, darling. So, my ancestor Vikings want you to know that you're going to be with the Princess of Norway in the future. And I'm thinking, my God, Mom, seriously? I'm about to go search for animal chin, and you're talking about the Princess of Norway? Like, my friends, we have things to do, because I was really into this thing called searching for animal chin. It was
What
like,
is that?
Searching for animal chin is basically
Is this in California?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So
you're living in the Bay Area at this time when you're a kid,
Foster
right?
City.
Okay, yeah.
So we were between Foster City and Hawaii, because my dad remarried and got my stepmom, which is Hawaiian Filipino. So we would go back and forth all the time. Search for Animal Chin basically was a skateboard's dream. It was this like ancient guru who could skate like nobody could skate. And so everyone from like Tony Hawk to Guerrero to everybody would we made these videos of searching for Animal Chin. So if you were a hardcore skater like I was with my friends, we were all like, we got to go search for Animal Chin too, which this thing never existed. They just had us all doing this. So we would go like to the Trocadero, we'd go all these places. It was really hilarious. So I was more interested in that, playing video games. I had my powers. I was still learning. I was doing a lot of training with one of my dad's mom's sister, who I bless her dear heart. And she was helping me understand what was going on with me and sneaking over to the house. She'd come over, but she would sneak me in my room and then train me and teach me and tell me like, the spirits chose you. These are the things that are happening to you. These are the reasons why. My mom was also amazing, instrumental. She would tell me like, you cannot deny your roots in shamanism. Your father's going to do everything he can to make you be like him, which he'll make you walk away from shamanism to make grandpa happy. You can't do that. The reason why me and your dad aren't together to this day is because your grandfather told your father to leave me. And you do things, and your father sabotaged our relationship, So my dad sabotaged relationship by, having an affair with my stepmom, who was from Hawaii, and it hurt. My mom made a rule that if you bring home your toys, which means any other woman, I walk out the door. And so it was a very challenging time, I think, for me, because My father, where there are days where he supported me and he was like, or have you learned this? Have the spirits put you through this? Have you got this information? And then there were days where my dad was just like, I think you should just throw it all away and like realize that we're living in a different time now. It's not the same that it was, you know. There's no tribe, there's no this. Like a lot of family members ended up in slavery. Like you should just, you know, you should just do what I did and just kind of like focus on the family business, which he, of course, was an architect, engineer, and general contractor. And you know, and so basically, I denied it. I denied him. You know, I was like, you know, I love you and I will always love you, but I am who I am. And either you support me in this path or you don't, but I will be able to make it and become the shaman that I was born to be. And I'm sorry that you chose to walk away from the shaman that you are. And then when he died, which was really great, he said to me, before he died of cancer, and he said to me, you know, you were right. And I should have stood by you stronger.
Wow.
And, you know, and he's like, I'm
That's
glad that
powerful.
you know, and he shared a lot of the teachings with me. He shared a lot about what it was like in his training. And he didn't want me to be an outcast like he felt growing up. My dad, you know, my dad's born 1923, you know, like a different time, you know, and he felt like we were the weird family in Nolens who had two houses. One house was for my grandmother to do all her shamanic, and the other house was where the family lived. And he always felt like you know, he was an outcast, and he didn't want me to go. He didn't want me to go through that pain. Oh, and start crying. He didn't want me to go through that pain, and I understand. I love my daddy. You know, I wish that. You know, I talk to him all the time on the other side. I wish that he wouldn't have played the fence so much, you know? I feel like it was very hard for me being when I was being outcast by religious people, by teachers in school, and by peers of friends of mine who I thought they were my friends and they just wanted to come over to see my powers, you know? So I felt like people weren't really there for me because they just wanted to see me like a circus act, you know? And he wasn't there to protect me, you know? He would just say to me, you chose this. You chose something that our family should have buried a long time ago. And
Damn.
but at the same time, he would also like forbid me from spending a night at people's homes, or like he had these rules about things because of course he was raised in that way, so he still believed that people could put curses on me and spells on me, and like I wasn't allowed to go to New Orleans because he said people would figure out who I am and they would want to take my life or steal my blood or do these things because of our roots have strong powers. So I never went to New Orleans. I never, you know, I never got to spend a night at friends' houses. And when I did, I was interrogated every time I walked in the door with his shamanic abilities. Like, you know, what kind of spirits did you bring into our home? Like, did these people feed you something? Why would you eat from their table? They could have poisoned you. Like, this is his mindset because that's how he was raised, you know? And so when people would beat up on me and make fun of me, because I would feel things and say things that I thought was normal to say. And then I started realizing that people in school were programmed by this matrix, this system that has put them through an institution of control and wanted to see if they follow rules. And I could never follow those rules. And I just didn't understand how to be the type of human being that everyone wants me to be. And sometimes to this day, I don't feel, you know, like you know, people see me in public, they see me on TV, they see me in things and they think, oh yeah, you know, he's got it all figured out. And I don't have it all figured out. I'm learning to navigate this existence on Earth right now and still getting and experiencing how, you know, the ramifications that come with being different, you know, like I can see things and feel things and spirits that people would never think exist, you know? Like someone asked me the other day, I was on this thing called Inside Edition, and they asked me a question. the people were like interrogating me on this TV show that's coming out. They're like, "Do you believe in goblins?" And I'm like, "Yes." But for someone that hears that, they might think, "Oh, he's crazy." But I'm sorry. I live in a different world. I see different
Yeah.
creatures, different beings. I remember one time I was in Turkey and I told my friend, I go, "Do you see that crawling on the building over there?" And he's like, "See what?" I was like, "Oh, wait, hold on. I got to open your powers." And I touched him and I said, "I'm going to share my energy with you so you can see." He goes, "What the hell is that?" I said, "Those are the night stalkers. They crawl on people's buildings and they tune into, people's thoughts and ideas, and they open up doorways for dark spirits to go into people's dreams." Like, but I can't just like, tell people. So I think like when people say like, who did you dedicate this book to? I dedicated it to my dad. If anyone reads like who the
I
book
saw
is
that.
dedicated, it's dedicated to
Yeah.
my dad. And the reason why I dedicated it to him, and he's like telling me he's sorry, he loves me, and I love you too, Daddy. But the reason why I dedicated it to him, because I wanted him to know that like I didn't walk away. And this is for the part of you that walked away, that I'm representing in our lineage and our family and our bloodline. And yeah, that's, and it was hard. It was challenging. It was abusive. It was painful. I mean, there are times where doctors would tell me, "Oh, you're schizophrenic. Oh, you're a manic depressive. Oh, you're bipolar. Oh, your son has autism." No, I do not. I hear spirits. I see things. I feel things, and I realize I'm a multidimensional being. I'm sorry that you can't understand that there are many spirits that make up my body, and you think I'm a schizophrenic. I'm not. I just know that there's many spirits that chose to be me, and that all those past lives that I say is past lives aren't really it's not I lived a past life. They live in that lifetime, and they are created this body in this dimension because everything is quantum. So they are operating through me. So when I see myself as a pharaoh in Egypt, that's a spirit that shares this body with me, as I was a woman concubine in ancient China. So all of these different things are a part of me. But this is really my first life, but I'm the embodiment of all those spirits. And yet people beholden to this one idea, like pouring water into a glass, and that's who it is. So the doctors kept giving me medications and stuff. And, my dad would be like, "You have to take these medications." I'm like, "Dad, but you know the truth. Like, you know this." He's like, "But what if I don't? What if I made a mistake?" And it was just always this back and forth. And then he would be like, "No, I don't think you should take those medicines. Like, spirits came to me last night. I had to talk to our ancestors, and like, you have to honor and be true to who you are." Next week goes by. "I really need you to start reading the Bible." It's like,
Oh, damn, bro. I'm dizzy
it's
from
dizzy.
yeah, yeah. Well, in this unique situation that you have in this embodiment, it's really interesting to me because it's like, oh man, there's so much there. I want to try to encapsulate this in a way that makes sense. So, in my paradigm of reality where I exist, I feel best when I'm focused on the physical now dimension. That's the one thing that kind of keeps me grounded, right? Is even though I'm aware that there's multitudes of dimensions and I've had brief access points to those various dimensions, not to the degree that you're describing, those have been sort of like a glimpse to show me, okay, there's more here on the earth plane than meets the eye. Like doing ayahuasca or something like that's a great example where the veil's lifted and you're like, oh shit, there's all this other shit going on that I don't normally perceive, because it's like your average human like me, our brain is sort of filtering out past lives and filtering out the ancestors and filtering out the fucking goblins on the building in Turkey, and we're just zoomed into this very sort of narrow frequency of reality, which is quite comfortable in a way because it's just easier to stay focused on what's here. And so it seems like in your case, perhaps those filters that are normally in place for your average person are porous, and your veil is a different veil. And so as you're going around in your waking life, starting from an early kid and also having some assistance from the people around you, how to access that and how to, sort of contextualize what you're experiencing, because the other kids aren't seeing shit you're seeing. It must be really challenging to have gifts like that and also to be able to stay grounded in just like being Durek, just a dude. You know, like how do you reconcile seeing the things that you see and also keep yourself here and feeling stable and like you belong and feeling solid in your body? You know what I'm saying?
Your questions are out of sight.
Because to me, like,
no one asks me these questions.
I take brief journeys through meditation and different things that I do where I lose the body, I lose the personalities, and I'm in the ethers and I'm seeing shit that is in other dimensions. But those are like brief glimpses at it. And then I, always come back to being right here. I got black jeans on, I'm on a white chair, you're here, there's a microphone, there's a dog. Like I'm just here in the physical body. And still aware that spiritual realm is there, but I'm not dipping in and out of it all the time. It's like I'm in the physical, but I have one toe in the water of the spiritual dimensions, which is what keeps me connected to God. And I got to be with God, consciousness, or I fucking lose it. And so I learned that 23 years ago when I had a spiritual experience. But if I go too much into that, it gets too confusing. There's just too much data to take in. So your radio transmitter seems to take a lot of channels in at once, dimensionally speaking. So, how do you stay just you as an adult now, coming out of that childhood where there's all of this, these different authority figures pulling you in different dimensions, and also the matrix of society and education and religions and all of this. Like now that you kind of identified, all right, this is who I am, these are my gifts, this is my mission here on the planet, and you're still seeing all of this shit. Like in this room right now, you might be seeing some energies that are on me. Hopefully they're angelic. And so as your filter is different than a lot of people's filter, how do you still, drive a car and make sure the taxes are paid and do all the earthly shit?
I don't. I have a team that does that for me.
Okay.
Because I can't focus on, how can I put it? Like, okay, you're sitting here right now, right? I see all these spirits behind you and all through the room, and I can feel them behind me and over here. And not only do I see them, I'm also tuning into the other beings and other planets that are actually scoping themselves here to learn from our interaction and how we're operating as human beings that aren't human. And then I'm picking up on all of the different family members and energies that are there that are paying attention from the realm of light. And then I can see all the darkness that's sitting there listening to our conversation and watching us and observing. All these things are happening simultaneously. And so for me growing up, it was a challenge for me. That's why I never finished school. I went my highest grade that I went to school was 8th grade. I told my father I can't handle this institution because I'm sitting in class and I can hear and feel everything that's going on. And so my dad paid my way out of the school to high school. I did a half a year in Hillsdale High in San Mateo County, and I walked out the door. And like my teacher's like, "Where are you going?" And I'm like, "I'm leaving." And they're like, "Why?" I'm like, "You're trying to brainwash everyone in this school to buy into things that support this system. And I see all through it, and I can't be here." And I walked away. And my dad's like, "You have to conform. You have to do this." And I said, "Well, then I'm sorry." Then he's like, "The truant officer is going to come for you." I was like, "Let him come. Let him come. I will figure a way through this system." I am not, and I never went back to school. I never felt that the institution of school, I never understood what taxes are. I never understood, what is this thing you pay for something to be in a place to live? You have to buy food. I mean, it took me a while to get comfortable peeing and going to the bathroom. I thought that was a tedious task. All of these, I'm telling you straight up, you want to know how I think. I mean, these are things that my family knows how I feel about it, but I've accepted it. However, and I'm learning, I'm not the best at being like I watch you and I admire you. I think it's amazing how you interact in the physical world, how you're just really grounded and I spend so much time going to other places and traveling and visiting other places and meeting with other spirits and helping them out in their dimensions. Sometimes I'll be laying in bed and the spirit will come in and say, "I need you to get this type of stone in your hand so I can channel the energy to my dimension from your world because I need this energy in my world. Can you go and get it?" Fine. "I need you to tell this woman that her child's going to make it through surgery. She's been asking for help, and we need you to deliver the message." Fine. "I need you to tell." I mean, it's crazy. Sometimes my girlfriend will say to me, Like, are you talking to another spirit? I'm like, yeah. They're like, they're in the shower with you right now. I'm like, yep. They're like, she's like, okay, babe, well, do whatever it says you need to do. Because when you take the role as a shaman, you are ambassador now. You are ambassador to the spirit world, to the physical world. So I will get spirits who will come to me and say, like I had a woman, for instance, walk into my friend's opening of his new hair salon in Arizona. And she walked in, and I saw a boy with her. And then she came back up the stairs because she was putting all the plants for his grand opening. And I go, oh, who was that boy with you? She goes, what boy? I go, the one who went downstairs with you. And she goes, is he playing games with me? Is he for real? I was like, uh-oh. I go, that's right. I got it. I go, your son has a message for you, And she's like, what? I said, your son, the one who died in the motorcycle accident, he has a message for you. And then she's like, oh my God, I can't believe you're saying this to me. His message, the spirits want me to deliver, is that there is an afterlife, and here's your message. And she goes, last night I was praying that if there is really an afterlife, if he can see me, and then you deliver this message. This is my life. It's been this way since I was a little kid.
Wow.
Since I was a little boy. And my mom takes me to the dentist, and the spirit says to me, follow me, come with me, I have something for you to do. And then I left my mom. I was like, a little boy. I was like, she said I was like 3 years old. And I walked away from my mom while she was talking to the dentist, opened up the door, walked 3 blocks away, found this woman who was going through pain. The spirit told me exactly what to say to her as a little boy. And I said it to her, and I snuggled up next to her on the bench. My mom was like looking for me. She didn't panic, because my mom never panics or anything. She walked down the street, kept looking and looking. She found me. And the woman said, oh my God, you have the most beautiful daughter, because I had very long hair. And she goes, no, that's not my daughter. That's my son. And she goes, oh, he's so powerful. He told me all these things about myself. How did he know that? She goes, oh, she goes, my son is very spiritual, and things like that. And she goes, well, what is that? That was my whole life. That was my whole life. I told my friend, we're sitting at a club. I look over at my buddy and I go, dude, your girlfriend's having an affair right now. And he's like, what? And he goes, dude, are you serious? Or are you just playing with me? Are you serious? Like, he started getting in my face, like all balled up in fist and angry and stuff. I go, get your fisticuffs out of my face, okay? I'm not into it, okay? I'm delivering a message that Spirit asked me to deliver to you. So here's the message. He goes, no, she's not. No, she's not. She can't be. I'm like, okay, we got in my car. He's like, are you serious? Or are you just messing with me? I go, no, I'm dead serious. And if you want to know the truth, here's what you're going to have to do. You're going to call her, tell her she cheated on you, tell her that what the person looks like. So I'm going to give you his description. And then she's going to call and lie to you. And you're going to not break. You're not going to be like, okay, babe, maybe I should have made that up. You're going to hold your ground. And then she's going to hang up the phone and say that you don't believe in her and you don't trust her and da-da-da-da. And then she's going to call back and tell you everything. And he goes, really? I said, around 11 o'clock, she's going to call you back. And he called me up on the phone. He goes, I just got off the phone with her. She admitted everything. I said, I told you. I'm not here. I told my friend, don't go on this nature trip because the spirit of death told me it's coming for you. Now, if you want to avoid the spirit of death right now, don't go on this nature trip and eat something in nature because you will die. And so will your girlfriend and the 2 friends who are my friend Mike Swaggart and my other friend, they're going to lose their minds. Mike's going to end up in jail and she's going to end up losing her mind when later she'll become a healer. I said it very clear to both of them. I just got off the phone yesterday with Mike because I sent him money in prison. And he goes, I wish I would have listened to you. He goes, Stefan wouldn't be dead. Mitzi wouldn't be dead. I wouldn't be sitting here in jail. He was like, and you're right. Robin became a healer. I was like, I'm a harbinger. I whatever Spirit tells me to do, I do. I don't question. Spirit goes, leave your house right now. Give everything away. So I go, okay, here we go. Give it all away. What next? Go to Sweden, go to Israel, go to this place, go to Turkey, go here, go there. And I just go. This is, when you are a shaman, you are not listening to the physical world. I listen when people come in and talk to me. I'm like, okay, great, fantastic. That's wonderful. I love people's stories because they're only seeing one side of themselves. They don't see the blind spot. So I go, okay, that's great. Okay, well, here's what the Spirit has to say. And they're like, oh my God. Whoa, wait a second. No, I can't believe that. I mean, of course, they said you would say that. So we'll give you some time to marinate on it. And then they come back, oh my God, you're right. You're so right, blah, blah, blah. I don't care about being right. What I care about is putting the power back in your hands. What I care about is seeing society and people wake the fuck up and recognize that they are powerful global leaders. What I care about is that people walk out the door and know how to talk to their guides. What I care about is watching people be able to access any healing power in the universe they need to, because they know how to tap in to all of the resources that are available to them, because they're not putting walls and barriers and saying, I can only use Reiki, 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 Reiki. There's nothing wrong with Reiki. God bless, love, thank you, Reiki. The point I'm making is Reiki is one of the billions and zillions of healing symbols and techniques that Spirit is waiting to bring to someone who's willing to go into the unknown and get it. But if you keep copying and regurgitating and following what everyone else is doing and not going in to that place and letting Spirit open the door to show you these things, then you become a codependent person. And that's exactly what darkness wants. That's what the system wants. And that's what the matrix wants. Because codependency makes it easy to run policy and run war and run all these things right past you. It's the whole Caesar mentality that I talk about in spirit hacking, which is circuses and bread. It's Caesar mentality. Caesar said, give them the arena and give them cheap bread, and they'll never know what the Republic does. Well, those things have not changed, and they're not far from where we are today.
Yeah, now they call it Fox and CNN, and NFL and NBA.
I'm alive. I'm alive.
All the
I'm
acronyms.
alive.
See, it's so funny listening to you talk, because I think oftentimes people, they see people that have unique gifts, right, and are able to sort of play in these different realms. Think, oh man, I wish I had that, because then the ego thinks, well, I'll be special and I'll get attention, and everyone think I'm so fucking woke. I hear you talk, and I'm like, damn, dog, I'm glad I'm the type of shaman. I just get I got one messenger. It's just the Godhead, and it talks to me through intuition, and it's just like a little nudge, like a little more to the right, Luke. Okay.
Right.
Say yes to this thing, say no to that thing. Explore this relationship, end this relationship, that kind of thing. And it's very broad, and the times where I have had experiences where I have had a couple things where not even in like a psychedelic experience, but stone cold sober, a visitation, as I call it, where like my body's vibrating and I'm like, what the fuck? Something's happening here that is other than this dimension. Those have been sort of intriguing, but I don't know what it would be like to have that shit happening all the time. I don't think that's something that I would want. And I guess that's, in God's infinite wisdom, didn't bestow those powers onto me, because that's not my particular karma and my fate. My dharma and my shamanic journey is much different than that. It's just like real straightforward, real down to earth. And so it's fun to see the contrast of like, oh man,
it could be for now.
What an interesting experience you're having in this incarnation.
Let's talk 10 years from now, Luke.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, things are opening up, though. Don't get me wrong. Things are opening up. It's getting more interesting all the time in that regard. But the thing I wanted to ask you is go back a little bit, because I know a lot of people get, when they hear like shamanic traditions or shaman, like they immediately now, I think because there's so much popularity in plant medicines and things like that, which I think it's awesome, and there's a lot of opportunity there. There's also a downside to it, which we can discuss. But I'm curious, going back to the very origins of the traditions that you come from in West Africa, was there ever any use of iboga in that scene at all?
I was offered it. And for me, I'm a spirit shaman. So if I do anything, I did it really early. So I did African catbush. I did an iboga ceremony. I haven't done ayahuasca. And it wasn't for the sake of I need to open up some door. It was for the sake of understanding the spirit of these things. And I can say that I got more from being a spirit shaman than I have ever gotten from any kind of plant that I've ever digested, or any type of root that I've ever put in my body from drinking it or in consuming it or smoking it into my body. Because being able to have this clear vessel and then enter into the same worlds and even deeper than what people go into when they're doing these different medicines, because they're poisoning their body to create this, this response because of what happens to their brain and the way what releases from their brain and all these different things that are taking place. I don't want to go through the whole science of it all. Is a different experience, because then you're not beholden on, oh, the plant did that to me. The root did that to me. Like, for instance, I had a girl today who came in and had a session with herself. That's what I call it. You're not having a session with me, you're having a session with yourself. And I showed her how to open up her powers. And when she opened up her powers, she was purging and throwing up all this poison out of her body into this trash can. And then she was shaking, and she entered into an ice world. And then she traveled through all these different dimensions, and and got to speak to spirit, and gave her all this information about her life and all of these things, where her boyfriend was in the room watching the whole time and experiencing, this experience without there being medicine. And afterwards, when she was able to draw ancient symbols from the spirit world into her body and cast them from her hands and be able to change the gravitational flow of energy moving through her body, she was like, you got to be kidding me. Like this, there is no medicine in this. There is no medicine. No, there's no medicine in this at all. And the thing is, the medicine is you. You're activating the medicine that's already inside of you. So for me, I rather do it that way. Some people feel like they need to have something from the outside come into the nucleus. I always believe activate the nucleus and create and go into the worlds that are available. And there's so many. And I think that, if I had, if I was, and a lot of times people think, oh, Shaman Durek, you're a shaman, you have all these powers. My powers are constantly growing. It's not this like I have all these powers. Yeah, I do have a huge storehouse of powers. I won't lie about that. And I don't share every single one with every single people, because some of them can be very destructive if you put into the wrong hands. So I wait to see how much of the people who come to me who want to put the power back in their hands are coming from a heart space versus look at me, I'm powerful space, which to me is just all bullshit. But at the same time, there is an energy gauge of, things that the spirits still show me. Like my dad is on the other side now. My ancestors are there. A lot of the tribal members are there. And not only that, when you're a shaman, you're connected to all tribes, not just this time, but in the time of when Earth was Pangea. Any time that Earth existed, you're connected to all tribes that have ever been. So once you are initiated in that energy, you can tap into any of those energies and lineages when you tap into the spirit world. And it doesn't mean you have to just be a shaman as well, too. That's another thing, because a lot of times people are like, oh, well, you're not a shaman because you weren't born in the tribe. And dealing with tribal. That's not what makes a shaman. A shaman isn't about being in a tribe. And right now, the earth is calling shamans out of their sleep who are never going to be a part of a tribe. They're just born with the energy that goes back into their being from their spirit that has lived in those tribes and other embodiments. So they're waking them up and saying, call to action. We need you to go forth and do blah, 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 blah. So I think that for me, I go more into the understanding of showing people, like, look at what you can do outside of your need to pull something in from outside. And then once they see that, they're just like, what? How? That was so easy. I had no idea. Yeah. And then look what else you can do. Oh, and let me show you this. Oh, and let me show you this. And it becomes fun. And it becomes this great thing because they walk away not with being codependent upon me.
Right.
And I always and I have a lot of love and respect for the Bible. I don't have respect for religion. I have respect for the Bible, and I'll tell you the difference. I have respect for the teachings of Jesus, which is pure unconditional love for the sake of love, and to love all people as your brothers and sisters, and to honor that proclamation of you can't enter the kingdom of heaven unless you come as a child. I love his teachings. I do not adhere to the misassociation of God's teachings and unconditional love for the purpose of war, or putting someone down, or calling someone out of their name and thinking that you're pious or holier than thou because you are Christian and they're not, or if you are Muslim and they're not, or whatever it may be. I think that there is the essence of that reality that people want so much to hold on to. And we really have to step into the essence of the teachings, of the love, of the energy, of that, like I give of my body to you, drink of my blood, not because I'm giving it to you because I'm higher than you. I'm giving it to you because I'm asking you to go forth and do greater wonders than I, not for you to be like, oh my God, you're amazing. Another golden calf to worship, another idol, oh, look, here's the idol. It's a cross with Jesus on it with dirty underwears and a crown on his head. And that's not how Jesus would like to be represented, just so y'all know. No. Jesus would love to see the images of like heart opening, love inclusive for all people, embracing all things, not they hurt me, I'm a victim, and feel guilty to love me. No, who wants to feel guilty to love anybody? That's horrible. So
That's funny. That's funny, your reflection of that iconography, because I remember when I was a kid, I wasn't raised, thankfully, with any religion, because I've been able to dip into all of them and learn something without having any attachments. But there were members of my family that were, I guess, Christian, quasi-Christian, but they would have these fucking crosses up on the wall with like painted bloody hands of Jesus up there, and kind of looked like Ted Nugent, and it just looked very scary. It was, I was just like, whatever that is, that's scary. I don't want any part of that. And then, fast forward into being an adult and not having attached myself to any of that or having any of it really forced upon me. What you're speaking about is so cool. One of my favorite books, there's a author called Emmett Fox, and he was part of the New Thought movement around between like the 1920 and 1940. There were all of these kind of English scholars and Americans that were scientific Christians, where they would take the teachings of Jesus and sort of dispel all of the religious part, right? And so just take the teachings of the Bible. And there's a book by Emmett Fox called Sermon on the Mount. And in that, he basically distills down the message of Jesus that you can live in your life, which is the one that you just described, that of unconditional love, and gets rid of all of the metaphor, all of the dogma, all of the construct of religion. Is like, here's what the dude was saying, here's how you put it in your life. And that book changed my life, because I didn't have to join a religion or even be, quote unquote, Christian.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, this is a great teaching. I don't care who the person was or what their name was in that incarnation. It's a pure teaching, and if I put it in my life, it helps me and it helps other people. And that's all you need to know, which is a cool thing to be able to experience, where I didn't have to unravel like my, Catholic upbringing or something like that. A lot of people, I think, struggle with God because God and religion are so intertwined that they can't separate them. And I think it's kind of a gift to not have any original faith, so that I could make it up as I go.
They painted God as Santa Claus. You're good, you get rewarded. You're bad, you get it. You get punished. And that narrative was created by darkness to keep human beings afraid of God, so they'll always be in contrast to God's teachings, because God's teachings, or creation's teachings, is pure love. Come back to love, be love. I mean, there's a perfect scripture in the Bible that talks about the prodigal son. I don't understand how people just don't know the story of the prodigal son. It's so clear. But again, they'll utilize all of the things that darkness infilled in through St. Constantine, who was infiltrating the Bible with all of these ideas of, dogma and, right versus wrong and all this stuff to keep the people corralled, that they don't see that. Like, I'll give you an example. People will say, oh my God, you're a shaman, you're evil, you're this, you're the devil, blah, 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 blah. You okay? Yeah, that was a lot of love I was giving you, huh? You feel real good. So basically,
he's talking to Cookie, not me, guys, just for clarity. I love that though, dude. Every interview, Cookie comes and sits with the guests. It's one of my favorite features of the show now. It's kind of a thing she does, and she's obsessed with me, and she won't ever sit with me. She always sits with the interviewee. Okay, anyway, back to the Bible.
Yeah, so going back, so people will say, oh, you're evil, you're this, you're doing black magic, shamanism is the work of the devil, blah, 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 blah. Little do they know that Moshe, was a shaman. He was trained in shamanism by Jethro, which is of the Midian people. Then the Midian people are the people who teaches you how to be humble and have humility and be one with nature, connect to spirit through visual, through seeing, through breathing, and all these things. If Moses did not go into the Midian people's ways and learn shamanism, he would have never seen the burning bush. The reason why he saw the burning bush, the reason why I can see the burning bush, if the burning bush was burning, is because of the fact I can see beyond the physical realm. He was able to see beyond the physical realm. What I found very fascinating is that when people say that, they have no understanding of context. They don't understand that a shaman is basically an ambassador for the spirit world to humans. And that's exactly what Moses did. He ambassador himself back to Egypt, connected with his brother Aaron, went and faced his other brother, which was, the Pharaoh Ramsey, and told him, here's a message from the spirit world. Here's what God wants you to do. Let the people go. Very simple. Did he question it? Did he sit and go, I'm not going to go? Because no, the thing is, when you're a shaman, people can tell me, oh, you're wrong. You're doing the da-da-da. I'm like, I'm sorry. I don't listen to you. I listen to only one voice, and that voice is the voice of God's servants of the light. If an angel comes to me or a being of the light comes to me and says, go here, do that, I'm ready to go. I'm not going to sit back and go, oh, well, this person thinks I shouldn't go because they think I'm making it up. I'm sorry, you can be whatever. You don't see the burning bush. I do. When Moshe went over, he couldn't speak. He had a speech impediment. He had a difficulty, so his brother Aaron would speak. And his brother Aaron would bring the proclamation to the Egyptians. And it was also the power that he gave him to pour in his power into him to help bring them out of this, enslavement and in this level of life that they were living. Now, those things have not changed. The difference is people don't believe those things can happen anymore. But then they'll say to me, oh, Shaman Durek, your book is crazy. It's a madman's talk. It's this, it's that, and the other. Okay, but you won't believe what I'm saying because you don't have any context to back it up, but you don't really have any context to back up the Bible. So it's like, we can pick and choose all we want all day long, which is great. But the question is, are we operating in a field of consciousness where we're willing to look at new ideas, or are we comfortable being comfortable in our uncomfortable, which will become more uncomfortable because we're not evolving? And when you don't evolve and nature is evolving and everything else is evolving around you, that's when the chaos theory comes in. That's when the energy of distortion becomes so strong that literally it's like a bee trying to get out of your hands because you're holding it and you'll get stung. And so we have the power to open ourselves up to being able to bring in fresh perspectives, new ideas, new innovations, new technologies, new ways of adapting as human beings on Earth, not for the sake of the individual I, but in the understanding of the we and the understanding of the we that will come after that we and will continue to come after that we for a thriving evolutionary process of human nature in coherence with the animal kingdom, in coherence with the natural kingdom, all of which supply us, give to us, and support us in our ability to sustain life.
How do you reconcile the fact that in our earthly existence, there's so much evil? And I ask this question from the perspective of, okay, if there's a loving God energy in the universe, then why isn't the earth just all unicorns and rainbows and waterfalls and all unconditional love and no borders and everyone just is, singing Kumbaya around the proverbial campfire? Why is there pedophilia and mass murder and slavery and all of these things? I'm very curious as to how you reconcile the existence of that polarity.
So the way I reconcile the existence of that polarity is through understanding the proclamation of creation, right? The proclamation of creation is such. You are a child of God, which means that you have what is called a creator code inside of your being. And every time you open your mouth and think, that code is being activated, and therefore God is amplifying your creative code into existence. So even though people may think that they don't participate in the things that are happening on the planet, it's a funny thing to say, however, they are. So if you are a person who is utilizing your free will, which is your creative code, to emulate the idea of a possibility of something that is contrasting against the light, darkness then is formed. There isn't like something buffering it or stopping it, because free will is the actment of love of our creator. It is the idea of you can do whatever it is you believe you want to do, create whatever it is you want to do. And when you want to align to the ultimate source, which is pure love, unconditionally, all accepting, all forgiving, which is basically acceptance, you are able to then transcend into and back into what is known as our creator, which is God. So God has given us this free will, and human beings have utilized this creator code in destructive ways by thinking in contrast to that which should have never been thought in contrast. That's why I love the stories in the Bible of Cain and Abel and all this kind of stuff, because you can see directly the contrast within Cain. You can see that Cain has chosen to use the creator code for destruction and therefore, killing his brother and so forth in the idea of getting more love and acknowledgement from his family and yada, yada, yada. The point of the matter is that what we call evil is a description given to you by the Matrix. The understanding of darkness is our brothers and sisters who use their creative ability or code, their free will, to magistrate something different than unconditional love at some time or another. And because of that, the realm of darkness was created. And in that realm of darkness is a magnetic fold. That magnetic fold pulls all beings who hold that same frequency into it. So when you die, if you can't love and accept every life you touched and affected because of your choices, your behaviors, and your decisions, then you choose not to go into the light. Because to enter the light, you must be like a child. You must be all accepting, all loving, and all unconditional to say, I accept everything that is, everything that I've done, everything, I take full responsibility for it, and I'm able to go into the light. So the ones who don't go into the light go into the realm of darkness. Now, the realm of darkness is a very interesting realm because in the realm of darkness, in order to sustain darkness in that realm, the realm of darkness needs the light, but it can't take the light from a place of unconditional love. And so that's where we come in. What it can do is it has to be able to manipulate you consciously to use your own power against you, to change your light source into hate, anger, rudeness, deception, and anything that goes against you and your brothers and sisters and creation itself from the understanding of unconditional love. That being said, it then takes that energy and transfers it into the dark realm to expand the dark realm to other galaxies and other dimensions while maintaining the beings in the dark realm to have a home to hide away from the light. Now, the biggest thing that darkness wants, which is why I find it very fascinating how people choose to respond, because they're responding exactly to what darkness wants. So darkness's whole thing is to get you to shut off your capacity for unconditional love and pull yourself into a conditional love, which means that you still support the darkness. Because if you cannot love someone unconditionally, then you are not able to tap into the creator code that is the co-creator code with creation, which is God's complete unfoldment, as we would say, the prodigal son, right? So darkness's whole thing is to get you to be mad at the darkness, be afraid of the darkness, and find more darkness than other people instead of calling forth their light. So when people go around and say, oh, you're an evil, dark person, they're servants of the darkness. The darkness is like, yay, we got agents. They think they're actually pious and beautiful and serving the light and bringing the light to a higher place. What they don't realize is that we have them doing our work for us. All they have to do is keep going around telling everyone how horrible and nasty and disgusting they are. And all they have to do is keep judging the darkness, hating the darkness, rebuking the darkness, and attacking the darkness, and we get stronger. Is everyone happy down here in the underworld? And everyone's like, yay! We never have to take responsibility for the things that we did and come into a place of love. Yay! We have a hiding place. Yay! So you have all these people walking around the earth going like, you're going to hell. Da, da, da. And the darkness is like, keep going. Come on. Tell the next person. Tell the next person how evil they are. Tell them how bad they are. Tell people how horrible they are, how bad they are, how they're never going to this and they're never going to that. And this makes the darkness stronger. And, this is a downfall of humanity, because human beings should use their consciousness to see that you cannot deal with darkness. Using the same polarity, the same frequency, the same elocution, the same everything, do you actually think you can transmutate, that you can configurate, that you can bring transformation into alchemy to change the darkness back to its original form, which is the light?
Dude, this is this is so good. My motto in life is don't fight the darkness, make the light brighter.
That's it.
That's my motto. But what you're describing is especially, and I always really try to avoid talking about politics on this show because it's just too inflammatory, and there are conversations I'd rather have in private due to the climate. But one thing I've noticed, especially in the past couple of years being in America, past 3 years specifically, is there is so much hatred of hatred. We hate those people that are haters. It's exactly what you're talking about. If you step back and watch, it's like it's coming from the side that I think used to be historically the more tolerant, liberal, loving, accepting, all-inclusive sort of side of politics and culture is now, it's almost like there's been a polar shift. And because there was negativity and hate, or at least perceived to be on the other side, now those people that used to be what we would call liberal, loving, kind people, progressives, you could say, are now like the most hateful because they hate the people that hate. And now there's this feedback loop that's really interesting to observe. And it's exactly what you just described. They're missing the real golden key of change and transformation, which is kill them with kindness. That you can't fight darkness with more darkness. And that's so amazing the way that you laid that out, because I'm not politically engaged or involved, but I am aware, and I'm very much zoomed out of the whole war between like left and right. It's like, it's all a game. It's all theater anyway, like we were talking about. But to watch the theater and go like, you guys, you're fucking falling for it. You're taking the bait.
You're eating the chum.
Yeah, you're taking. Yeah,
Eating
exactly. You're taking the bait from that dark energy and that dark force. And I think a lot of people are, again, well-meaning, that like, there's darkness there. I'm going to go fight it. Kill the dark people. And it's like, oh, dude, now you're adding fuel to that negativity and to that fire. So that's one piece I think is a really great distinction.
And you do get sucked into it. Even as a shaman, I catch myself sometimes where like when people put a lot of hate mail on me, and then I get frustrated and I go back and I'm like, you guys are doing this and this and that. And then the spirits come through and my ancestors come through and they're like, apologize for that. That is not how you're going to do it.
Oh, dude. See, either I'm not popular enough or I'm just not that controversial, but for some reason, and don't start doing it now, fuckers, I don't get trolled much. Like people
You're so lucky.
People don't talk a lot of shit about me. But every once in a while, actually, this is a good one I want to run by you. I'm gonna switch gears here a little bit, because you are a person of color, and it's just, oh God, am I gonna go here? Yeah, I'm gonna fucking go here.
Okay.
Because when I see you, I see my friend Durek. I see your eyes. I see your spirit. I don't give a fuck what your sexual preference is, what color you are. Since I was a little kid, God bless my mom, who I had a great talk with last night. I mean, one of my first lessons in life is like, that's just like someone's suit they're wearing.
My biological spacesuit.
Yeah, it's fucking, it's dumb, like, to even get caught up on that. She was born and raised in Berkeley, and so I was just brought up. And even my dad, who's like a hunting, fishing guy in Colorado, like, I've just never seen him ever be like, oh, that's a black person, that's a Mexican person. Like, he doesn't even identify someone in that way, so it's just not part of my paradigm. But back to the trolling thing, it wasn't even a troll. I just took the bait recently when I have an application on my phone that goes bing when I get a review on my podcast. 99.999% of the time, the reviews 99.999% of the time, the reviews on my podcast are like, oh my God, it's amazing. I'm learning so much. This transformed my life. And they're so beautiful to see. And sometimes there's constructive criticism. It's like, I wish he would talk about this more or this less, or I wish he would shut the fuck up and let the guests talk more. And, there's some valid points there. But one of them the other day was like, I used to like this show, but now it's like, just because there was a show I did where, God forbid, I interviewed a white male like myself, and they were like, this is just like two white male bros. This thing is so like heteronormative and white. And I'm like, you're fucking racist. Like, imagine if I gave a review of a podcast and I was like, I don't know, who wants to listen to these two black ladies like sister it up? I mean, I would be like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you just change the color and the gender, you would be called fucking Hitler, And I was like, really? So then, but that's my ego defensiveness. I'm like, I'll fucking prove you wrong. But I did post it on Instagram stories. And I was like, yo, girl, you're fucking racist. Like, take a look in the mirror. This is negative. Like, get the fuck out of here, whatever I said. I tried to be diplomatic, but really I was actually annoyed by it. And then I started thinking. I was like, okay, maybe there's some truth here. It's not true that there's something wrong with having a conversation with someone who has pink skin and blue eyes, and I have that same color skin and brown eyes. Like, okay, we're not wrong for being white and being male, because that's not even who we are. We're souls that are just in this spacesuit, right? And I didn't choose to be fucking born the way that I look and the gender that I am. So let's leave her criticism of that apart. But I thought, well, is my show inclusive enough? Like, am I including everyone? And then I did a little math and I looked at my website because her gripe was kind of that it's too it's too broy. That's what she said.
The bro show.
Yeah. And I'm like, is that really true? Let me do some inquiry, because my first thing, as I said, was defensiveness. So I went on my podcast and I didn't add up every number, but I think I'm around like 60% female guests. Not by design. I find a lot of women in the world interesting and I want to sit down and talk to them. I don't think about, I got to interview women. I'm just like, who's doing shit I want to learn about? And there's been definitely a minority of people with darker skin like yourself. Again, I don't think about that when I'm booking a guest. Like, do I want to have that person on? I don't think about like what color their meat suit is. And then I thought, well, yeah, geez, I've only interviewed a couple Asian people, and there's been a couple African American people. There's been maybe a few Latin people. And it would be like fabricated if I listened to that person. I was like, oh, fuck, I need to go interview a bunch of black people. That would not be authentic. It's
not at all.
If someone comes along and they happen to have a certain skin color or another certain skin color or certain genitalia, I'm going to fucking interview them because I'm interested in what they have to say, and that is secondary. But being a black dude yourself, what do you think about this idea of inclusiveness and that everyone should have an even ratio of everything? And do you feel like you're included in things? And do you feel racism, or do you even think about things like that? I mean, do you walk around going, I'm a black dude, or you just walk around like I'm a spiritual being?
I do both. Because I want to understand the temperature of climate that happens on the planet, for the fact that racism still exists on the planet, and it shouldn't, however, it still does. And so therefore, in order for me to be able to bring a wisdom and clarity around it, I do have to experience. That's why I chose this biological spacesuit. I didn't choose this biological spacesuit just because I'm Shaman Durek or because I'm whatever. I chose to be a male with a female spirit that has chosen a melanated skin tone to experience what racism is on this planet, and to experience also what the idea of masculine is, and the idea of feminine as well. And then the blurring between sexuality, ideas of sexuality, and how people choose to label themselves and define themselves in this here and now time of evolution. And so, do I think that the wellness world is much more predominantly white? Absolutely. I have found that a lot of the wellness world will go to other cultures and utilize the knowledge and information from those cultures that are coming from either indigenous or from like India or Africa or from like, Indonesian or all of these things, and then adopt those principles and then begin to emulate them into the wellness world as, this is who I am, this is what I am, without actually giving back to those cultures and giving back to the relationship that those cultures have cultivated throughout time to bring those knowledges and those ideas forth. So I do see, because I'm I'm very observant being, even though I know that this is just my biological spacesuit, but I do have to acknowledge what also I came on the earth to forward Dr. Martin Luther King's dream. And in order to do so, I need to understand, in order for there to be an all-inclusive understanding of people from all walks of life, all colors, all sexuality, and all these different ideas and concepts, I do need to understand where the imbalance lies. And what I do see, which I find fascinating, is that there are a lot of people who don't think that they're racist, but they are.
Right.
Because they will say,
right.
"Oh, well, I'll look at I look at different like leading podcast people, and I look on their roster. I go down their list, and I find no black people, no Latin people, just like blonde girls, brown-eyed guys, like, just very, very, Anglo-Saxon, Caucasian, look, but not operating from culture, And I find it very fascinating. I go, oh, wow, that's so interesting. And I've had situations where I've been, I wanted to go on certain podcasts and so forth, and I noticed that they didn't bring me on because they were uncomfortable with, some aspect of my being Now, do I have a correct reference that it could have been the color of my skin? But when I look at their roster and I say, hey, there's no people, or when I look at companies like Hay House and I go, hey, where's all the colored people who have knowledge and information that comes from their roots and their cultures and their understandings of theology, philosophy, and, you know, an observation of creation? They have a lot to say as well. So I do think that there is a deficit. I do. I see there's a deficit, and I feel like it's not about running and trying to get the next, you know, melanated woman or the next Latin woman or the next Asian woman on your podcast or in your health and wellness. But I do believe that we need to start expanding health and wellness to all communities. I do believe there's a lot of people of color who have a lot of information but don't feel accepted in the white community as far as the wellness world is concerned. I actually they just interviewed me in London for Glamour magazine. I did a whole thing about this, how the wellness world is whitewashed, and I do believe that it is, because I don't see a lot of people of color being brought forth and lifted at the plateau that you and I are, to bring their messages and so forth, because I can feel them holding back because they don't feel like they're being invited in.
Oh, so it's like a self-perpetuating exclusivity where the invite's not felt. And so, you know, someone's not putting themselves in a position, like, to me, honestly, and, you know, I don't mean to sound naive, where, like, I understand within our social constructs that the color of your skin is very fucking meaningful, and that I'm much more fortunate being born in 1970 in California with less pigment in my skin than more, that my life was probably a little easier. That said, I had some fucked up shit happen to me for most of my life too.
You have.
You know, like Bob Marley said, you know, what does he say? It's one of my favorite quotes, and it's slipping my mind. Oh, every man's burden is the heaviest, right? So we all have subjective suffering, and we experience that to the degree that we do. And so I'm aware of that. And also someone who is wanting to get as many different points of view as possible on my podcast and the media that I'm producing. I don't think about the color of someone's skin or their gender when I have them on the show. I'm just looking for people that are doing cool shit, and I don't really care, you know? So it's, from my perspective, it's like, I know that I'm not racist, but when someone makes that comment, like on my podcast,
but that's why
like,
they're making the comment.
And they're going, and it's a white lady who's criticizing me and another white guy. I'm like, wow, that's the opposite of Martin Luther King's message. His message was, I don't judge people by the color of their skin, but of their character. And when I'm producing media, as I do, I'm judging people as whether I think that they would be a fit on my platform as by their character and the essence of their energy and their information and body of knowledge. And I want to include people that have less of a voice, and oftentimes that they're not even selected based on, I'm like, oh, I want to give this person a chance because they're not being accepted in the wellness world. I'm like, dude, I've interviewed people on the fly, like Matt, actually, that was the show she was bitching about. He was an 18-year-old kid that I met on the street in New York City.
Never been telling about him.
Yeah, never been on a podcast, didn't know shit, but I was like, I'm going to help this kid out because he's smart and he's talented, and maybe he never had a shot on a podcast, not because of the color of his skin or his race, but just because no one would give him a chance, you know? And so I want to give everyone a chance. And also, if my show is like, say, 50% about biohacking, I know maybe like 2 or 3 African-American dudes that are into biohacking, you know? So it's like...
But I don't think this is a reflection on you. I think this is a reflection on you to look at where there is an imbalance in the health and wellness world.
Okay.
You know, how can I put it? Like, I see and know that there is different energies of groundedness in different people's cultures. And I've learned this very, very based upon the lineage of the things that the culture has gone through. You know, for instance, like when I sit down with a friend of mine who's Caucasian, okay? And I'm just using color just to give the description of the thing, because I really don't care. But let's just say, I know that when I'm talking to my friend who's Caucasian, he tends to, or she tends to, stay in a certain place of comfort when it comes to how deep and how sensual and how grinding and how, you know, like going into the deep root of the conversation. When I sit down with like, you know, a melanated sister or a melanated brother, the conversation becomes very deep, very grinding, very like, let's get in there and like whatever, because of the certain ways the cultures were raised and what they've gone through throughout their lineages, you know?
Oh, right.
And I mean, especially if we look at like, you know, epigenetics, for instance, you know, if you look at the African American culture, they went through a lot of slavery, a lot of relocation, a lot of survival to keep their family members together. So there's a deeper way that we're raised than when I would go to my friends' houses, who were like my friends who were, you know, Caucasian or white, however you want to interpret it. I watched how their parents would communicate. I watched their body language. I watched how they would sit on the table and eat, and how they would eat, and like all of these different things. And then I go to my friend's house, who's like me, who's melanated, and I watch the deepness of emotion, like these deep core level emotions that are so deep, it's like someone cutting into your body. There's a certain energy of that. When I talk to my friends who are from India, there's this unique, intense, mystical something that's coming out of them that I don't get when I'm talking to my friend who's Asian, you know? So there's all these beautiful colors, these beautiful arrays of colors that need to be shared with the world. And what I think is that, and you know, and I'm not blaming this on white people at all. I'm basically saying that all those who do have melanated and who are color and different cultures need to step up and say, you know what? I don't need to be invited. I've invited myself, and really get into that space, because we have so much knowledge to share through culture, and there's so much knowledge to share through culture. Like when I moved to Turkey, one of the things that I found was so fascinating is that the Turkish people, when they speak, their emotions are so intense that they're manifesting immediately when they open their mouths. But then when I was in Israel, I noticed that when they speak, there's these codes that get activated. And then when I was dealing with Palestinians or different people, everyone has these different ways. And so it's nice to I would say, for the wellness and spiritual community, to kind of bring this kind of all collective, all informational source, and start thinking like, hey, you know, yes, there's this yoga instructor who is, you know, this blonde hair, blue haired girl, but I want to see what the yoga instructor who's this, you know, African American woman who, is doing yoga, how's her perspective versus her perspective, you know? And I think that creates a contrasting for education, and also a contrasting for us to develop new ways of looking at things from different angles. It doesn't mean that one is right over the other. It just means it gives you a different, more broader viewpoint. It's like looking at the rainbow of its many colors and spectrums that it can shine through a human being. That's how I look at it.
I think that's really interesting from the perspective of, you know, because I'm just like, fuck all that. I'm colorblind. Like, I don't think like that. But I think the thing that you said that's really piquing my interest is looking at the DNA code of the lineage, right? So to me, it doesn't mean shit to me that you come in and you have darker skin than me. Exactly. I'm not like, oh, I'm interviewing a black guy. Like that doesn't even cross my mind.
No.
But because of the DNA code of your lineage, you're going to have a different point of view than someone who comes in with the Viking Caucasian code that's going back, that's that's from Norway or Finland or wherever, right? It's like in that lineage. And so in my Euro mutt code, I don't even know what I am. I'm so many damn things. There's something there in my lineage that's a unique offering because of my ancestry that I could bring to the table. And that is true of all those other people. So it's not so much about the superficiality of someone's particular skin tone. It's about like, ooh, what's behind them in the lineage that they're carrying and might not even be aware that they're carrying because it's still unfolding.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah, I couldn't wait to ask you this because for some reason I got super triggered by that comment. Because I thought I just don't like racism. No matter who it's against. This happened to be white race against white people. It's not because I'm white that bothered me. I just think racism is fucking dumb, and I don't like ignorant idea. It's just dumb. It's an ignorant idea. It's not logical. It makes no sense from my
I get reverse racism from a melanated community for my girlfriend being white.
Oh, right.
So I not only get it from the white side of the population who are racist against my relationship with Marta, with Princess Marta. I also get it from what people, the African American community, as you would say, that I've sold out and that I should be with the sister.
Oh, that's fucking so dumb.
So it's really fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And actually both, her and I laugh at the whole thing because it's just like, oh my God, really? Like, this is what we're focusing on?
Right.
But again, these are symptoms. These are not the core issues of what is causing our human race to attack one another and act against each other and act out of character. These are symptoms of a much bigger issue. And that's the thing that we need to be looking at. It doesn't matter if we want to focus on symptoms and do things in a compartmentalized way, then that's our choice to do so. However, the sickness that we have inside of us is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and fatter and fatter and fatter and consume even more of us because we're not identifying the real situation.
That's interesting. You just reminded me of something. I was dating a black girl when most of my primary long-term relationships have been with either mixed or with black women. I don't know why. I just ended up that way. And my first girlfriend when I moved to LA was an amazing singer, and we were in a band together, and we were dating. And this is in LA in the early 90s, and there was a lot of racism here because you had...
I remember.
I'm not in the early 80s, 90s.
I remember the 90s.
In the early 90s. And so you had the Rodney King beating, you had the LA riots. There was a lot of tension, and you had a very corrupt LAPD, the Rampart Division. There was a lot of racism within the LAPD. They were doing all kinds of fucked up stuff. So there was a lot of like tension in the air. And I would be out with her, and we'd walking down Hollywood Boulevard on our way to do a gig or whatever. And black guys would pass us and talk shit to her. Mm-hmm. They weren't pissed at me. Like, I was always afraid I was going to get my ass beat. And I'm just like, I love this girl. Like, I don't even care what color she is. We dig each other. What the fuck? But they never said shit to me. I never felt really threatened. But they would always get on her as like being, like kind of a traitor, or like you said, a sellout. And I just remember I was so sad.
Why are you with the white devil? That's the stuff.
Yeah, like I was like so saddened by that. I mean, I get it, understanding, as much as I can coming from the historical perspective of that point of view and all the pain body that exists generationally going back so long. Like, I get it. It's not like I'm like, oh, why don't you guys just be chill? But it was sad for me because I'm just like, I'm this innocent 21-year-old kid. It's just colorblind and is just in love with someone. And
they're like, why are you dating the master?
Yeah, it was like really, it was just, it was
ridiculous.
It was really heartbreaking at that time. And then, at least in this city, that subsided. And I never really experienced that again, when I would date women of color after that. But it's, I don't know, man. I hope that through the work we're doing in conversations like this that we can all uplift. And I think it's a healthy perspective where you do acknowledge history, you do acknowledge differences, you acknowledge culture, you acknowledge ancestry, lineage, and also the fact that it's just a spacesuit. That both are true, all are true.
Yeah, like stop putting so much in, like on it. You know what I mean? Like I always say, like people take life way too seriously. They put too many rules. Like even today, I was talking to one of my students, and I said to her, it's really challenging a lot times in this planet for me because there's so many rules. There's rules and rules and rules and rules and rules. And a lot of these rules are never been examined. They're just rules. And if you break those rules, people get mad at you, And so, for me, I find that a very fascinating thing. And, and also to the context of what you're saying in regards to racism in the 90s, I remember I would come from San Francisco to LA and get go to a party and then tell everyone in the party I'm having an after party at the Beverly Hills Hotel or whatever, and people would say to me, "Okay, great," and they would totally ignore me. Like, who's this guy saying that he's having a party at the Beverly Hills Hotel? So I told my friend, I have a friend named Anthony. I said, Anthony, I need you to go around this room and tell everyone you're throwing a party at the Beverly Hills Hotel. And then he would go around, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're definitely going to be there. Where? What's the address?" And so it was really funny. So then we're at the hotel, right? And I had got all of the room and everything set up, and had it just super sick, delicious, amazing experience. And people came in, and they're just like, "Who got this suite? And who's paying for all of this?" And my friend Anthony was like, "My friend, Durek is paying for it. And they were like, the black guy?
Oh, dude.
So it was quite an experience, at that time. And, the thing is like, I was talking to friends of mine the other day. I mean, I deal with racism. When you're a melanated person, I mean, I go in elevators and I watch women hold their bags and look at me.
Oh my God.
And like, I deal with it all the time. I see it all the time. I see it in the wellness community. I see how people look at me. They like, who's this guy talking? Oh, what is he about? And da-da-da-da-da. Or who's this guy who was Princess Marta? Who does he think he is? And, I can see it. I can feel it. I can smell it. I can taste it. Now, the question is, what do I do with that information? And how do I use that information to better our world?
And how do you?
So right now, for me...
So say you're confronted with the situation. Well, I mean, maybe no one would be so overt as to say something to you. But, I mean, like, do you ever walk in a store and they're looking at you more than they're looking at the white dude there?
Of course.
And shit like that?
Yeah, of course.
And so, I mean, how do you... That's got to be painful. How do you bring unconditional love in a situation like that where, you're innocent, you're just doing you, and you're getting that kind of shade thrown at you? Yeah.
So in that situation, I just don't really pay attention because I go in and I do my thing and I realize that that's where they are in evolution. But like, here, let's take it for instance. Like last week, I'm at the airport with my publicist. We were just flying back from San Francisco because I was doing a lecture at this college. And there were these three guys. I knew they were racist because of the way they were speaking to me and cracking jokes, and I could hear them. She didn't know. So as I was, I was going because I have this thing where you can go in front of the line, I forget what it's called, clear or something like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, I go in front of the line, whatever, and then I see them, and they're like, they look at me, and they're like laughing and whatever, and then they turn to me and say like, you do realize that the line's over there, you do realize that, right? And I heard this voice in my head go, they have an issue with you because of your color of your skin. And so I was just like, okay. And then they went behind me, and I could hear them making racial comments behind me.
Are you serious?
Oh, yeah. And I've dealt with this many times. Like,
oh, my God.
And then they
were you
like,
transported into 1936? Like, what the hell?
Oh, no, you don't even understand. Like, I was on tour a year and a half ago, and I was in Jacksonville, Florida. And I was staying at the Ritz-Carlton meeting my students who, we were going to have dinner, and then I was going to do this thing for their whole family. And they wouldn't even take my car. The valet just turned their backs on me. I just drove up, and they saw the color of my skin,
my
and
God,
they just
dude.
turned around. Then I got out of the car and was like, could you please park my car? And they're like,
whoa.
So I was like, all right, fine, I'll park myself. And then I go in the hotel, and I tell them, I have a suite, and I also have arranged a chef table at the restaurant Salt, and I have some guests coming, and da-da-da-da. And they're like, you have a reservation at Salt? I'm like, yeah, my assistant made the reservation. Is everything okay? They're like, okay, we need to check that. And I'm like, okay. So they checked that. So then we ended up going to the restaurant, and when I go there, the woman, I was like, oh, I have a reservation at Salt. And they're like, excuse me, what's your name? I'm like, Durek Verrett. And they're like, are you sure you have the chef's table? And I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I have the chef's table. My assistant made the call. And they're like, huh. And then they go, they go, oh, well, yeah, here's your reservations right here. And then the party comes, and we get to the chef table. And when everyone in the restaurant saw that it was black, they all called for their checks. And then the woman who came out to serve the table looked at me, and she goes, oh, no. And she walked away. There was like silence. It was just us sitting at the chef's table, no one else in the restaurant. And then this other German woman came out, and she goes, I can't believe racism still exists like this. This is crazy. She won't serve you because you're black. I was like, yeah, I figured that much. Will you serve us? And she goes, absolutely. My manager sent me out here to deal with the situation. And it was not even just that. It was even when I went into where Amelia Island was. I went to a cafe, and they served everyone at their tables except for me. And my friend stood up and goes, if you don't serve my friend and I right now, I'm going to throw the biggest scene you've ever seen. And then they were like, came over to me. They're like, hurry up and eat and get out. And like when I went into town to do some like shopping.
Wait, what goddamn town was this?
Jacksonville, Florida.
Oh my God.
But it's not just Jacksonville. It's other places that I've been. It's like, but when you
Wow.
grow up with that in
Yeah.
America, you build a tougher skin around it. You see
Right.
it, and you're just like, oh, poor darlings. Now, a lot of people who are melanated don't say poor darlings. They just get angry. Where I've learned that people are where they are in their evolution. I've had people hold guns to my head who are KKK, and I've dealt with a lot of crazy things in my life when it comes to racial issues. So I handle things a little bit different than a normal African American person would handle it,
Yeah.
who's angry about the situation. What I don't, really adhere to is violence. When it becomes violent, that's a problem. When it's just calling me names and saying things, I'm just like, okay, wow, okay, you know. And then there's days like, where I'll get letters from different countries that will say things to me ever since they heard about my relationship. I get letters from people who are like, we don't want a nigger in the royal palace. Like, who do you think you are? I'll lynch you, I'll cut you, I'll do this to you, I'll do that to you. And I did a big interview in London Times that did a whole story about like the issues that I've been dealing with ever since being with my girlfriend, Princess Marta. And it's fascinating because I just kind of look at it, and now I have to, of course, report it all to the police. But I look at it and I go, wow, people have that much energy and they're still stuck in that paradigm that I threaten them because of the color of my skin instead of my love of my heart and how much devotion I have given to humanity. But it's okay, because we are moving through the signs of times, and I'm still going to keep doing what I need to do. And if it ruffles people's feathers and makes them upset, so be it.
How do you handle I'm upset because I get like one negative iTunes review. Meanwhile, when I was a kid and I looked really weird and had dyed hair and earrings and makeup and shit, I experienced a little bit of that where I was like,
that's awesome, dude.
I'm I'm about to get my ass beat by some rednecks. Like that was a reality, nowhere near what you're describing, but a little taste of being an outsider here and there.
I would have been there with you because that's my style.
Right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to now this relationship you're in, which is so fascinating, and you're with someone who's in a part of a royal family and is very high profile and all of that, and now when we were hanging out in London, you're like, oh yeah, dude, when I go to my hotel tonight, like paparazzi will be waiting on the curb and like photographing me and all that. I'm like, oh, this sounds like a fucking nightmare. Everyone thinks they want to be famous, right? In Hollywood, everyone wants to be famous. I don't think they realize like, yo, I just want to go to Trader Joe's and like get some granola, like leave me alone. So now you're kind of, you're in this very high profile relationship, which is now I'm seeing more controversial because you're not a white dude from another royal family in Europe or something like that.
Or some lawyer or doctor.
Yeah,
or some,
right. And you're, not only like a dark-skinned person, but you're really out there and like you're seeing shit in different dimensions and all your, shamanic explorations. How are you dealing with this sudden influx of paparazzi and so much, press and these really online trolls, not only trolls saying they don't like you, but they want to harm you and all this? Like, how are you handling that just psychologically and keeping your Zen formation?
It hasn't been easy. And I have gotten a lot of counsel from a lot of friends of mine who are really high-level celebrities who I used to always tell, like, well, you chose this path, like, da-da-da-da. I was so arrogant. I'm arrogant in saying that to them when not knowing what they're really feeling. I was only looking from the lens that I was seeing as the shaman, thinking like, well, this is the path you chose and this is the road you laid. And so therefore you have to realize that this is what comes along with it until it's you. And, I'll be honest, like when we first announced our relationship globally, I went into shock. I would cry to my girlfriend. I would like lay in my bed and start shaking. And I would, every time I walk out the door, there'd be like a camera in my face. And like, even when I came to the airport, especially in Norway, they made a circle around me. I thought I was going to trip over my luggage. So I was really holding my cool, but at the same time wanting to say something to them and be loving and polite. Whereas my niece was just like, get them out of our face. It was intense because I thought, oh, it was only going to end there, but it didn't. And so I would come back to my place and they would be hiding behind vans. The whole ducking thing to me is actually hilarious, as if I don't see the paparazzi. That's the shit that I think is the hilarious shit.
What do you mean?
Okay, so I come out of the hotel So here's a perfect example. We're in New York. We're at my resident hotel, the Mondrian, where I stay, and there's a van across the street, and there's a man who sits in the van all day, and he has a camera at the window of the hotel lobby, and he just sits there like this, and he looks. And when he sees me or my girlfriend enter into the lobby, he gets a walkie-talkie, and he goes and tells all the paparazzis where we're going to be. How we're coming out, get your cameras ready, they're coming, let's get the shot. But whatever he's saying, I can see him. At first, I didn't know, because one day we were coming back one night from dinner, and I go, oh, that's a strange van across the street. She goes, honey, that's the paparazzi. And so she's educating me on where they're hiding.
Right.
So now I'm learning, like one time I was at the Palace, and it was, for one of their amazing days that they celebrate. I think it's the Constitutional Day. And she's like, we're going to go in and you're going to go straight into the palace and you're not going to linger in the courtyard. And I was like, I don't see any paparazzi. There's no one here. She goes, okay, honey, let me educate you on the new life of yours. Do you see that tree way, 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 way over there? There's a man in the tree with a big lens who's looking at you right now.
Oh, my God, dude.
And I was like, what? So she'll be like, and that van that's outside that you see when we come in, those are the paparazzi. And you see that man on the corner who's acting like he's sitting in the bench and he's like minding his own business. He's also the paparazzi. And you see the one who's across the street over there walking like he's having a nice stroll through the park. That's the paparazzi. And you see the one who just ducked because I looked and he went behind the van. That's the ducking thing I was telling you about. That's the paparazzi. But the weird thing about it is that I'll be walking down the street and I see that they come out like this and they're like, and then they dunk under the car as if I didn't see where you were going. It's so weird, and
dude.
then they come out and then they wait. And then when I turn my head, they come out again. And it's like watching them moving around the street. I see like one on this corner, there's one behind, there's one over here. When we were in Turkey, I thought, okay, I'm going to get this villa, my girlfriend, my family, one of my close friends from my childhood, and it's going to be this, place for us to relax and be exclusive with ourselves and whatever. And I'm coming out of the villa and I see this head pop up above the bush, and it's like, so we're inside the villa, and she comes in, she closes the curtains, and she's like, honey, you cannot take off your clothes in front of a window anymore because they can see you. They can see into the window at everything that we're doing. You have to learn these ways. So it's like a crash course, I'm on a crash course. I make a lot of mistakes. I'll be honest about it. I've made some serious mistakes that I've embarrassed her family, embarrassed the kids that I had to take responsibility for. There's things that I've done. I'm not perfect, and I don't proclaim to be perfect, but I'm learning. And it's about respecting her culture, respecting her, and learning about her culture, because I don't know about how Norwegians think and how they perceive things and all of this kind of thing. So I'm learning. But it's not just Norway. I'll be in London, and we're coming out, and there's a guy in a wheelchair, and I'm thinking, oh, it's just some guy in the wheelchair. And then he turns around, and he goes, Shaman Durek, Princess Marta. And we're like, and he's like, I was like, and then I was like, so we went in the place, and I was like, oh, this guy's in a wheelchair. So when we come out, we can just, like make a beeline for the car. Well, he wasn't paralyzed. We go towards the car. The guy pulls off the blanket out of the wheelchair and starts running after us faster than I could run, And so he blocks the door, and I'm like, get out of the way of the door. And so he moves around us. We close the door, but the guy in the car had the window open. So he puts his hand in the window and he takes pictures of us in the window. And the guy who our driver was shocked. So he just left the car. He didn't move the car. So the guy's just taking picture after picture after picture after picture. And the thing is, my friend Kelly Rutherford said something to me really interesting. She's like, honey, you have to look at it like this. These people have to feed their kids. They have families. They have bills. They have to make their money. Let them take their shot. Stand and be beautiful. You and Princess Martha look very beautiful. Let them take their shot. And then you go on about your life, which I do, but then sometimes it's too much. They keep following you all day long. You get in a car, they have a car waiting to follow you. You go into an event, they follow you in the event. You go to the gym, they follow you to the gym. You go to this, they do that. So for me, excuse me, for me, it's been an adjustment. I've been more mindful of where I'm at, what I'm doing.
At first, I thought it was just going to be the Norwegian press, but it hasn't. It's been Spain, it's been England, it's been press in America. It's everywhere. And I've learned, even in Turkey, and I've learned that that's what my life is going to be like. And I'm still learning how to adjust to it. I'm learning how to adjust to the trolls that come at me from like not one or two, but like 1,000 or 100. Like on my DMs are like, and it's just all people saying really mean things. And then there's a lot of people, which is what I focus on, is a lot of people giving me a lot of beautiful things. Like, you inspire us. People writing me from South Africa, from Africa. Oh my God, your relationship inspires me. You know, you've given us people hope. You know, we love you in Norway. Don't listen to what they're saying. Like, we get all that stuff and we focus on that and we focus our energy on that instead of focusing on all the negative, because the negative can wear you out. If you're in a, like, you had a hard day. I've been shooting like 4 films. I have another film I'm doing on Sunday. I did a TV show. I'm going into another big feature film I'm doing. All these things are going on. And it's like, you're tired, you've been shooting all day, you know what it's like sitting in front of these lights and cameras. They're doing my makeup, I'm doing a shoot for this magazine, I'm interviewing, then I'm going and lecturing, and I'm jumping on an airplane, and I'm lecturing again, and I'm doing this. And then you have time enough with your family, time enough for your girlfriend, time enough for her kids, so you can be, a well-rounded person. And then you have to make time for yourself, which is a challenge, for me, because my time for myself is at 5 and 4 o'clock in the morning, and so that's why I have my peace of mind, or late at night. But if I stay late at night, then I have to get up at 4 or 5 in the morning. Sometimes I have to do 3, meditations during the day to make up for the time that I lost in sleep. So it's a balance, and it's being able to handle the intensity of it all when you come off shooting a TV show or you're coming off a set, and then you pick up your phone and check your Instagram, and it's just like hate, love, love, hate. And sometimes now, before, I used to read it. Now, the moment I see just any hate, I block them.
Me too.
I become a block freak.
That's block and bless.
Block and bliss. Block and bliss. I've been blocking people. Like, it's been so much fun.
Yeah.
And my girlfriend is doing it now too. We just been blocking people.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to be a part of our life? Peace.
Yeah.
Good. Bye.
It's a good feeling when you resist the egoic temptation to fight back and make them pay and to win, because that's the first thing I want to do. Like, oh, really, motherfucker? You said what?
Yeah.
I'll show you. And it's like, now I already lost the game by engaging.
I've done that.
Now I dip down to their level, which is kind of the thing I experienced I was telling you about earlier, because I got defensive. I'm like, how dare you? I'm a good person, and it's like, why defend myself to someone who's low vibe? Just block. You don't get to be part of my little silly
Why defend yourself to someone who is not able to see the truth of your being?
Right.
It's like people, when Jesus was walking the earth, people were, doing the same thing, just in different ways. And people have been doing that since the dawning of time, and the difference is now they can't just come up to you and poison your food and do all these different things. I mean, I'm sure they could, but not at the level that they used to back then. What we have to understand is that, like, when you are stepping out in the public with a message that can rile people up or ruffle their feathers, you and I are feather rufflers, and we have to be okay with that. And that's literally what my sister and what my niece and what Sam and a lot of everyone who, is in my team remind me. They're like, you're a feather ruffler. You are going to upset people. Ride it. Like, it's okay, because the message is still getting out there. And I look at, like, when I go back into teachings of Dr. Martin Luther King and look at how many times he got stuff from people, I look at all of the pioneers of consciousness, even Helen Keller got stuff because she was talking about creating a system for people who are blind and deaf. And everyone's like, yeah, right. Okay. Ha 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 ha. You're crazy. Steve Jobs got told off. They were like, oh yeah. Okay. You're crazy. Not only are you crazy, we're going to take your company from you because you are a cuckoo bird. You are a literally crazy man and you can't run your own company. So peace out. We got this now. We're going to push you over here. Like, every single person who pioneers, engineers new ideas into consciousness are going to get that. I mean, look at Thomas Edison, Benjamin Franklin, all were considered crazy. I mean, to the point where Thomas Edison had an underground speakeasy to share his ideas with his colleagues so no one could hear about them, so they can lock him up in the paddy wagon. So you have to understand, like, You know, and people who were doing photography in the ancient days were considered the devil's masters. They were taking pictures of people. People saw that as evil. The Wright brothers were considered crazy cuckoo heads. Like, you really think we're going to be able to fly like a bird in the sky on some kind of thing that looks like a bird? Yeah, right. You know, Amelia Earhart. You mean to tell me you as a woman are gonna fly and do this trip and do this and do that? But guess what? They did, and so that's what we have to hold strong to.
In terms of relating, this is the last thing I want to cover. You've described yourself as soul sexual when it comes to sexual preference, and you're pretty open about this, but we've had conversations about human sexuality, preferences. You like men, you like women, all of this stuff, which again, to me, I really don't care. It's not something I even pay attention to. It's like where you want to put your reproductive organs and who, like, don't hurt anyone, have fun. That's kind of my philosophy. But now you're dating a woman, but you say that you're soul sexual. What does that mean? And what do you think about people that are deeply identified with their sexuality and all this stuff that we have going on socially now? I think because of the bigotry and rejection by what was considered the norm historically, now people are becoming more free, and now there's all this activism and all of these labels, and so many people are identified like who they are as a being according to how they want to identify and who they want to be intimate with and all of this stuff. Like, what's your whole trip on that in the context of being in what seems like a really wonderful relationship, apart from the weirdos with cameras following you around?
So, yes, I'm soul sexual, and I always will be soul sexual. However, I have an amazing woman in my life, and I'm in the relationship with her, and I'm okay with that, and she's okay in understanding that I am a soul sexual person. I have a female and masculine energy that is very balanced, and, I'm a type of person that I'm not in love with the just all men and all women. I'm in love with the soul. I'm in love with the energy, and there is that connection. When it comes to the identification of soul sexual and why I created the idea of soul sexual is because all these things, like I'm cis, I'm bi, I'm straight, I'm this, I'm blah, 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 which are all more advertising labels that give people and the system a right to consume more products to you and to keep you in this very advertising, field of consciousness.
Wow.
Right?
And or to get votes. I've noticed that a lot. Like, politicians will be popping off, like, all of a sudden they're like all sexually inclusive and woke. I'm like, what? It's like, it's a transparent ply for votes.
Of course,
from
it's boxes and labels, and commercials now are being geared towards certain sexualities, and it's such a plethora of alphabets and information of labels that I think it takes us away from the core aspect of being a spiritual being and more into, again, another label. Like, for instance, black in America is an advertisement. It's an advertisement for consumerism, as so is white, as so is any of these things, so they can categorize you, put you in a box, separate you from each other, and sell you things that fit in with the labels and the boxes that you have been put into. I think that narrative needs to come to an end. And so the reason why I say soul sexual is because you're not really you're in love with the person's soul. You fall in love with their soul. You fall in love with the essence of their being, the nature of who they are. And so for me, I don't put on a rule that was created by the Matrix that programs me to be like, I have to deny the fact that I find men attractive, or I have to deny the fact that this or that, because humans say that if you do that, you're not going to get love, or you're going to be an outcast, or your friends are going to make fun of you and call you gay, or this or that and the other. If you read Spirit Hacking, you realize that there was a part in the book where I talk about my homophobia. And I talk about growing up with an African father who was very much against homosexuality and very much of my grandfather being against it in the religious context. And me also, doing things to attack that the nature of what people call homosexuality in such a deliberate way that my girlfriend was the one who brought it to my attention and was like, what is this? Like, what are you doing? Like, you got an issue here. You need to look at this. You are acting out this way because you have something inside that you don't want to take a look at. You need to go look at it. And it was only through that interaction of her helping me to look at it, when she's an amazing girl, her name is Swan, amazing woman, that she helped me to realize that I had an issue of being molested as a little boy from a male. And then utilize that to look at the things that I gained from that and the pain for it, and go through the pain, but don't sit in the pain, and utilize that as an opportunity through my knowledge of shamanism to turn that into some wisdoms and understandings. And what it did was it helped me to understand that I'm attracted to the soul of a human being. When I look at men, I'm not attracted to all men. I'm attracted to an energy, an essence. When I look at women, I'm not attracted to all women. Well, actually, now I'm not attracted to any women because I have the most amazing women in the world, And not only do I have the most amazing women in the world, my girlfriend, the love of my life, the goddess, the empress, the queen that I see her, she is so powerful and so understanding of just accepting all of who I am. Whereas I've been in relationships with women, and I'll start banging the drums, and they'll be like, do you think you cannot do that in the house? Okay, we're not for each other. If I start dancing around and put like a feather on my head and like, whoa, 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 and my girlfriend starts looking at me strange and sideways, you're not the right woman for me. My girlfriend now doesn't do that. She's like, oh, I love it, babe. Keep banging it harder. Like, oh, put more feathers in your head or whatever. Like, let's go play video games. Let's go hang out. Like, okay, let's go play Super Mario. Like, just really cool, down, real, honest. Will check me in a second. She, people will say in the media that that I put, like, a lot of people keep saying like, oh, he put a spell on her through his black magic, which is hilarious. We laugh at it because I'm like, actually, if you were in our household, you would see that I am actually the one who's bowing down to her, because I'm like, babe, whatever you say, babe, you're right. Oh, you're right, babe. I shouldn't have exaggerated. Babe, I shouldn't have done that. Like, I'm always like, babe, I messed up, babe. I'm sorry, babe. I said this in the public. I shouldn't have said that. Oh my God, babe. And she's like, honey, it's okay. I love you, but you have to make these corrections. She's helping me become a better man. So, but there's no spells being put on her, because you can't put a spell on such a powerful woman. It's not possible. She's so activated and so powerful and so wise and so like present in her spiritual gifts and her abilities that I can say something to myself and she goes, oh, is that what you're thinking right now? I go, what do you mean? She goes, well, you were just thinking right now that, you're going to make changes with our plans. And I picked it up in your head. So is that what you're thinking? Why don't you just talk about it with me? And I was like, oh, yeah, I forgot you have powers. So it's a really interesting exchange because she has powers that are very similar to mine. So I can't get away with anything. She just grabs me, catches me, and then the great thing about it is that not only does she have powers, but then she has these 3 lovely girls who I'm in love with, and they check me. They're like, you should have never said that. You should have never done that. What do you mean right there? That's not true. I remember you saying blah, 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 blah. So I'm like, aren't they wonderful? They're just helping me to just refine myself. So I think on the context of soul sexual, I think that we need to get into a narrative that is all inclusive, not into these individual narratives that support the matrix, and get into something that's all inclusive. So I have chosen to create a soul sexual movement and to invite anyone who wants to step out of the narrative of the boxes that the matrix has created for you to go into so they can segregate you and keep you separate, and step into a reality that you are soul sexual. You are a person who's in love with the soul. And that's it.
That's awesome. I like that. You'd be doing me a favor because I can't keep track of the acronyms.
I know. I
don't even say the shit because I'm like, I'm going to get it wrong and someone's going to get pissed. It's hard to keep up with. And I think it's, something that I really struggle with also is political correctness and this sort of fascist mind control of how everyone has to talk and controlling of thought and speech because someone might get their feelings hurt. I'm just like, it's just too much. Like, at what point do you, if you're a kind, compassionate person, like I know that I am, I care about all people and I only want to do good in this universe, but it's also just, it's hard to just not be you at the same time, and I really value authenticity and realness and truth. And sometimes when that's present, people's feelings do get hurt. But that's not my problem. That's because of their fragility. But the more,
or their perception.
Yeah, because the more that we have all these constructs and these labels and all these, subdivisions of divisions of divisions, it's like, fuck. At the end of it, it's like you can't walk or talk without hurting someone's feelings, And I think a lot of this from my perspective, is perpetrated by the media and by the entities that own and control the media and all of the various symptoms of our culture. Because if society is divided and separated, they're easier to control. You know, if you have a unified culture, a unified
respect,
if you have a unified
acceptance.
populace of a country, a city, a town, a world, they're impossible to control because the unity is what holds them together, and that's where they generate their power. When there's disunity, which is what the media does with all of this segregation and labels, not that the segregation doesn't inherently exist, which we just discussed, but when it's magnified and so much of this stuff is put into the universities and all of the isms that we're sort of being infected with, I really, truly believe they're deliberately put into society to break us apart in order to control us and segregate us and extract more taxes from us.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's like really...
And consumerize more things for you to buy, so that all the money that you made from all the work that you did do, that you could be using to spend more time with friends and family and enjoy the beauty of nature and life and breathe clean air and eat good food, you're giving it back to the system because you feel this vacuous void that if I don't buy that and have that and have that, something's missing from me.
Right. Amen. Well, Jesus, and I mean that figuratively and literally, Jesus, the energy, and Jesus, the exclamation that, wow, what a conversation. I feel like we just hit a good ending point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I covered everything I wanted to cover. And then when you walk out, I'm like, I forgot to ask him about the thing. And we'll do another one. We're going to be hanging out. This will be out after this has happened, but we're going to be hanging out next week at Attune.
I know. I'm excited. And we get to be in nature together.
I'm super stoked. Oh, I know what. I did want to talk about something. And this will be the last thing. Dog's pissed. No, it's what, dude, because this is one of those touch points you made earlier. This is just a little PS here at the end, is you were talking about, where psychedelics, the plant medicines and stuff take us into these other realms where your average person like me can access these other dimensions and see things that are normally veiled by the human brain, that is just limited to this perspective of
filters of the matrix.
Yeah, right? So the filters get temporarily dismantled and they give you a view, and then there are people like you that are seeing these things without having to take anything from outside themselves inside, and you're interested in helping people and teaching people to learn how to develop these powers themselves, so that, not that necessarily there's wrong with getting help from the plant world or anything like that, but that you can develop these within yourself. And this is the work of Joe Dispenza, man, who's coming to Attune. Mm-hmm. I've known about him in the periphery for a long time, but he does, these intensives and stuff. I'm going to one in February, and people heal themselves of, they hop out of a wheelchair, blindness, cancer. Entities come in the room that everyone sees that come in and assist with the healing and all this shit, and no one's taking any drugs at all.
Amazing.
He's teaching people how to reprogram the subconscious and how to activate the pineal gland and all of these things, which, come from the various teachings of, going back through all kinds of different lineages and cultures, right, that lead to the same thing. When he talks, I always hear, I'm like, this is Kundalini yoga, dude. Speaking of like the Indian traditions. But he's teaching people how to harness these powers within themselves without anything from the outside.
Which I think is wonderful, and I'm so happy he's
isn't
on the planet.
Isn't that cool?
Absolutely.
So I just wanted to bring
I'm
that.
excited that I'm excited that we're going to be at the same place together.
Yeah, it's dope, right?
We're all going to be there. It's going to you, me,
Sahara.
We and Sahara were just talking about that yesterday. Light Watkins, Gabrielle Bernstein. I mean, so many powerful, amazing.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm excited. So, and John Wineland's going to be there. I'm going to get an interview with him too. So
yeah, and even my girlfriend is talking about coming.
Oh, yeah?
So you're going to
cool.
spend some time with her
great.
as well. Yeah,
that's awesome. I met her briefly at your book launch, but it was in passing, and you were such a rock star that night. There was a lot of people tugging on you. All right, dude. Including her. Thanks for coming back on the show for round 2.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
I can't wait to do it again.
Absolutely.